The Prime Minister is under pressure to make a U-turn on her mini-budget as a YouGov poll gives Labour a historic lead over the Conservatives.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 30th of September. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, radio and online, so wherever you are, you can take us with you. These are your top stories.
The Prime Minister Liz Truss is set to hold emergency talks with the Office of Financial Budget Responsibility to address the ongoing fallout from the Chancellor's mini-budget.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin will hold a formal independence ceremony to recognise the annexation of 4 regions in Ukraine. The Kremlin says these 4 states voted to join Russia. However, Ukraine has dismissed that vote as a sham.
And a new portrait of our latest monarch is released. The Royal Mint has announced new coins bearing the image of King Charles III.
We'd love to hear from you. Of course, this morning you know how to get in touch. Just drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It's odd, isn't it, seeing the image of Charles on a coin? Yeah.
It is, but I'm quite looking forward to getting my hands on
Yes,
one.
and me too, absolutely.
The 50p's will be out in December, won't they?
And there's nothing before that?
Well, there's that £5 coin,
Yeah.
but I don't know how you get that. Maybe
We'll find out.
order it or whatever,
We'll find
but
out.
we should get the 50p's in our chip. I don't use a lot of cash.
No, I don't, absolutely. But I think everybody will want to get their hands on one.
you want to
won't
get
they,
one,
to
won't
get
you?
started, yeah.
Quite nice. And we're talking of money, actually, but not in a good way.
Not enough of it.
No, the Prime Minister is going to hold emergency talks with the head of the Office for Budget Responsibility after the Chancellor's mini-budget continued to unsettle the financial markets.
Yes, the Treasury Select Committee has now pushed for an economic forecast to be published a month earlier than normal to try to restore confidence in the markets. And of course, this comes as benefits payments are now set to fall in real terms to try and save £5 billion worth of government spending.
Well, let's talk to economics expert Paul Sedgwick, who can tell us more. Hopefully, Paul. I mean, there's all talk about U-turns and all sorts in the papers this morning. I mean, look, anything that dramatic would in itself be problematic to the markets, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I think everybody's coming round to the view, or certain parts of the market are coming round to the view that they expected some form of fiscal easing from Liz Truss and Kwarteng, but the scale of it was surprised markets. And obviously, if things aren't communicated well to markets, then they tend to have a sort of kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I mean, across the globe, we're having weakening currencies against the US dollar. Interest rates are rising, and our country is no different to that. And mortgage rates are rising, and obviously, this is something that's not just particular at the moment to the UK, but to large parts of Europe and other parts of the world.
How much do you think is this happening to us because it's happening to everybody? And how many of the problems we're facing at the moment are unique to Britain, and therefore maybe the government should be doing something special about it?
Well, I don't think actually. The interesting thing is I don't actually think a lot of this is unique to Britain. I mean, the reality is that interest rates are going up across the world. The reality is that most currencies, as I've just said then, are weakening against because the dollar is particularly strong. Inflation rates across most of the global economies are rising. Mortgage rates are rising, and even in America, they're close to what they are in the UK. So a lot of the problems that we're facing, people are facing around the globe at the same time. I think the issue is and this is a result largely because over the last pretty much since COVID, governments have borrowed money to support the economy, spent it, and now they've taxed it to try and recover it. And historically, that combination of borrowing, spending, and taxing is never good for economies in the long run, and usually drives up prices, usually increases inflation pressures and all that sort of thing, which is exactly what we're going through now. What Liz Truss has tried to do is say, look, I tell you what, we need to break that spiral. We need to cut taxes. We need to support the economy. We need to encourage investment for not only internally, but externally, and get people coming back into the country and making it a place for investment. and try and drive economic growth in that way. The problem is the way that it was communicated. And the way that it was communicated left uncertainty in the markets. Amongst the, well, we don't know how much the government might have to borrow. We don't know what sort of growth this might generate. And so their immediate reaction was to sell risk assets and sell assets across the board. Sell the currency, sell the treasury bonds, so gilts, and stock markets across the world when the uncertainty fell. So it's a combination of all of those things.
The issue, Paul, surely is, I mean, and you're quite right, there's all those issues to contend with, but what seems to have upset the markets even more is that there was an OBR report, like a basic report, if you like, without all the details, that could have been used in conjunction with this budget to back it up, and they decided not to do it, which is, which seems an extraordinary thing to do. Yeah,
I think that they probably... That's exactly right. That is the problem. It was the communication of how they did this, and I guess maybe the speed at which they did it and the magnitude of what they did was just not anticipated. So I can understand, and that is what unsettled market and any form of uncertainty always leads people to sort of sell and ask questions later, basically.
So what is going to be achieved, or what do they hope to achieve from today's meeting with the OBR?
Well, hopefully what they'll do is they'll set up a budget, they'll address some of the spending issues. I mean, the other concerns are some of the way, but what areas are they going to cut spending? I mean, obviously there's demands for increasing spending on defence, there's always demands through NHS, for money for the NHS, there's education, there's all sorts of areas. So it's where they find these spending cuts from to reassure the markets that they're going to look to balance the books. So that, I think that meeting with the OBR is important to help stabilise the markets, which actually, to be fair, in the past week have stabilised quite a lot. The pound is now, having slumped earlier in the week, is now back above where it was at the start of the week. Interest rates are roughly where, bond yields are roughly where they were, and the currency against the euro is also slightly stronger this week. So generally, markets have stabilised as the week has gone on.
Paul, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I mean, the problem with all of these things is it causes uncertainty, and it's worrying, isn't it? All that business about pensions that the Bank of England was getting stuck into earlier in the week. And
mortgages getting rarer and going up, obviously, in price.
It's very unsettling.
And the talk of benefits being cut now in order to pay for, or at least being cut in real terms, to pay for it all. It's all very unsettling.
But we don't necessarily understand quite what's driving all of that, do we?
No, and Liz Truss will maybe quite justifiably say you've got to give it a bit longer than just a few days. But it's interesting that she's going to the OBR today, isn't it, when they clearly turned their back on them earlier.
We shall see what comes out of that. We'll keep you fully up to date. In the meantime, at 6:08, let's bring you some of the other headlines. And the Chancellor is being urged to use levelling up funds to stop tenants being forced out by soaring rents. The National Residential Landlord Association wants Kwasi Kwarteng to use £1.5 billion to unfreeze housing benefit rates and expand mortgage interest relief.
Charities are warning that high energy prices could harm children's development this winter. It comes after the YouGov poll, which found that a quarter of parents have already cut back on the amount of food they buy in order to afford other essentials.
Migrant children could be at risk of being mistakenly sent to Rwanda, according to the Refugee Council. A report published by the charity says 94% of children it supported last year were wrongly considered to be over 18 by the Home Office.
And a coroner is set to rule whether social media contributed to the death of 14-year-old schoolgirl Molly Russell, who ended her life in 2017. The inquest has been hearing how 13% of Instagram posts saved, shared or liked by Molly in the 6 months before her death were related to depression, self-harm or suicide.
The MOD has organised military burial services for several members of the Royal Air Force who died during the Second World War. The ceremonies were held this week at Jongerbos War Cemetery in the Netherlands and included one RAF pilot whose remains were eventually found in 2019.
Now, the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, is going to hold emergency talks today over his country's response to Russia's annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions. The Russian President, Vladimir Putin, will sign documents later today proclaiming Moscow's victory on territory where sham referendums took place earlier this week.
Well, joining us in the studio is political analyst and Russian exile Valery Mozharov. Good to see you this morning, as always.
Good morning.
What are we to make of this? I mean, Putin is continuing ahead with... I mean, this is all a complete sham, isn't it? And you can't think the world is going to believe that these 4 regions wanted to become part of Russia.
The thing is that we should take into consideration that from the beginning, even in the end of the previous year, 2021, Putin, if you remember Putin ultimatum, when he demanded that NATO should not, or Ukraine to become should not become part of NATO or member of NATO, and there would be no basis and all this. So even at that time, it was clear, and in Moscow, and he was not, trying to concede it, to cover it up, that the Donbas republics, which asked for independence or decided to be independent and were accepted as independent republics by Russia, that at the end they will be part of Russia. And in Russia, it is absolutely, there was no doubt. The only one thing that changed is during this war is that Russia, and actually it was clear that Russia needed the pass from Crimea to the mainland, because there were problems with the electric supply, water supply, and all this thing. So in any case, in Russia, everybody understood that there would be annexation or, in any case, this land will become part of Russia, especially because it was the most of the population are Russian-speaking in any case, but ethnic Russians also. Because this area was called in Russian history as Novaya Rossiya, Nova Russia. That means New Russia. Why? Because Catherine the Great, during the Catherine the Great, they've taken over this land, and from Turkish Empire, from Islamic countries, others, Crimea, Tatars Empire. And from that time till 1918, actually it was never connected to Ukraine. Ukraine was a small region in Russia, mainly rural area around Kiev. At that time, in Catherine time, it was part of Poland, Polish kingdom. So,
yeah, but I mean, all of this is. I mean, it's fascinating to see how all these areas have changed hands. But the point is now, Russia may think, well, this was, Russia considered it to be an independent region and always considered it would become part of Russia. It's Ukrainian sovereign territory. It's not Russia's decision, is it?
The thing is that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has come to a certain point, especially during the war. Even before the war, it was not like this. That's why I was considering saying, for example, that I was quite sure that Putin would not take a decision to invade.
Last time you came in, you actually said it was inevitable that some of these regions would eventually be annexed by Russia.
That's what I am saying now.
There's going to be big celebrations today, isn't there? Putin's going to actually sign documents or make an announcement. There's going to be big concerts in the Kremlin.
Yes, sure, it will be.
But where does it put NATO now? Because NATO's been very careful not to actually join in the fighting in Ukraine. They've just backed the fighting. They've helped with training and they've helped with money. But if now those regions are now called Russia, then there is a war going. We can't. Our very support means that it's a sharper end for NATO, isn't it? It's much more dangerous.
Yes, but the thing is that in Russia, in Moscow, and actually in Donbas also, they considered that the West and Ukraine have already come to a point where Ukraine army is a part of NATO. It is being controlled, it's being so much supported, it may, by NATO.
Supported, not controlled.
The thing is that it is accepted, even there were statements that say, for example, all the civilians civilian information, intelligence information, control over the movement, and information about it using satellites is being given by NATO. So in Russia, it is already officially accepted that they are fighting against NATO. And Ukraine army is the part of NATO. So there is, for Russia and for Putin and for Kremlin, there is no difference.
But that's only happened as a result of what Putin has done.
But he's still caused it to happen, hasn't he? Now, like I say, it's now...
From my point of view, it was the gravest mistake to invade. In Russian history, in Russian traditions, to be invader is very negative thing. But the problem is, and I never believed it, because, I never believed that Putin, being from KGB, he would believe in this operation that was staged by actually Ukrainian special forces, special services, that he would believe that Russian invasion or small invasion, your entrance, will be not only accepted, but would be welcomed by regional elites, by army elites. That was information that he had received.
What do you believe he is capable of next, then? Because, I mean, he's almost openly threatened that if now he's created those areas, those annexed areas, he will defend them to the death, even to the point of using nuclear weapons. Do you think he would?
I don't think, frankly speaking, that it would be required nuclear weapons, but what I'm quite sure, and it is, in Russia they say that openly, especially people who are close to let us put it, not only to Kremlin, but 80% of the population, they demand that, they demand denazification. What is denazification? Actually, it is Ukraine without present regime, changing of regime, making Ukraine pro-Russian, either part of Russia or not part of Russia, but pro-Russian. And I don't know there are different variants, what can come out of this annexation, but I think that we can see, say, for example, in few days or in few weeks, because now in Russia it is considered to be a special operation, and it is limited. You can't say, for example, Russian forces can't deliver strikes at bridges, at infrastructure, electric stations, and all these things. When there will be attack on the Russian territory, and it will be considered since not tomorrow maybe, because there should be there will be a meeting. There will be meetings of Duma, Russian parliament, and then there would be final exception. So it will be the Russian territory. That means that Ukraine and Zelensky can't afford stopping the fighting. So it will be attack on Russian territory. And then in this case, it becomes a war. And Putin is allowed, and Russia is allowed, according to Russian legislation and international, because it is a war, he is allowed, or Russia is allowed, to strike, say, for example, thermal power electric stations or bridges.
But that's laughable, isn't it? If you say, well, they've now attacked Russia, therefore we can act in this more aggressive way. But no one but Russia thinks it's Russia.
No, they don't think about what will be accepted by London or by Washington. That is first thing.
But they should think what's going to be accepted by Ukrainians.
The thing is that Ukrainians are divided in two parts. One part, which was at the last year, at the end of the last year, was the biggest part. They were pro-Russians. Zelensky was not popular. Actually, state was collapsing. That's why there was no reason of invasion. But now, because of the war, I think the majority of Ukrainians, they're anti-Russian. So, but in any case, Russia is to demolish present Ukraine. It is obvious. For most of the Russians, it is clear. The conflict is between not only two states, it is two mentalities, two civilizations. Ukraine has become different civilization. And because of this, what was going on for 30 years, it became anti-Russian civilization. So for Russians, it is a principle.
Yes, but also for Russian mothers, they don't want their sons going off to fight a war. And those Russian young men don't want to go and fight a war, do they? A war would not be popular.
No, approximately 20% they don't want to fight the war. If you go in deep into Russia, it will be 90%. If you go to cities, then it will be 70, 60. But the majority, 80% of Russians, they support the war.
Really?
And they demand, and Putin will face more problems inside Russia if he stops and if Russians consider that he has not fulfilled what is required.
Oh, it's fascinating talking to you.
It is absolutely fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much.
Valerie, thank you very much indeed. See you again, no doubt. It's just interesting to get that other side.
Exactly, the different perspective. Always healthy, isn't it, I suppose?
Anyway, look, we've got lots more still to come for you, including a trip to Northern Ireland, where one town is upping its profile by making a totally virtual tour of its business and retail sector. Find out more after the weather.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence across Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening's rush hour. A lot of spray and surface water on the roads, blustery conditions through the Channel as well. But that rain does get out of the way, and then we're left with a whole raft of showers packing in from the west. Slightly milder nights, but we'll still drop down to single figures, and it won't feel very pleasant on Saturday morning because it'll still be quite blustery, not as windy as today, and we'll get a mixture of sunshine and showers. With the winds coming from the west, it'll be western areas that see most of those showers. Northwest Wales, northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Not many getting to eastern areas, so a decent chance here could stay dry. Thickening cloud could bring some more persistent rain into the southwest later on. Temperatures maybe a touch higher than today's values. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, out the breeze. That breeze easing further on Sunday. There'll still be a few showers, mostly in western Scotland, but for most places, a dry and a bright day on Sunday. But watch out for that wet and windy weather today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News. "6:25, morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne."
Have you seen the new Boris Johnson drama on telly?
No.
Kenneth Branagh as Boris Johnson. It's called This England. Oh, it's so good.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it not
6
just,
episodes, you can binge it.
Is it not just being really horrible about him?
No. In fact, some critics have said it's actually too kind to him. Others say it's too entertaining and not nearly documentary-ish enough. But I think you wouldn't know it was Kenneth Branagh. It looks like Boris Johnson. He looks like him. He does him awfully well. The Dominic Cummings character is evil personified. I don't. It's just fascinating. You've got to watch it. You'll love it.
Yes. No, I haven't.
Total binge.
Haven't seen that one yet, but I will.
It's 6 episodes, and I can't help thinking there are more to be made. Because the Boris story goes on, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I wonder what will happen next. Derek's been in touch this morning to you, says that some other polls put Labour 33 points ahead. Yeah, talking about polls this morning. And it's a YouGov poll. Is it YouGov? I think it's YouGov
so.
that puts Labour 33 points ahead at the moment.
Which is unbelievable.
It's huge. Isn't it all about who you ask? And yes, it all really happens in the ballot box. Well, yes, it does. Anyone can take part in a poll, but not all are eligible to vote.
Absolutely, but it's a way of taking the temperature of the country, isn't it?
Yeah, and these companies, they don't just get the results, they then manipulate the results to make it reflect the country. So they're all... It's meant to
They
make it more
control
accurate.
for certain things, yes.
Yeah, so it's very carefully done. It doesn't mean it's right, but it is carefully done.
No, but... And often polls can be, one poll can be diametrically opposed to another, but this is unusual in that it is such an enormous lead for Labour at the moment. It's almost historic. And, of course, if it were transferred into a general election, it would be an absolute wipeout for the Tories.
Yeah, it would be.
But, polls are polls, and you have to always say it's not accurate as a vote.
No, it's
but
not.
It's nevertheless incredibly interesting.
Meanwhile, Lee says, personally, I don't think there's any way back from what we are facing whilst the Tories are in power. These emergency talks won't solve anything. Well,
but they
might.
could if the Office for Budget Responsibility comes out with a forecast saying, hold tight, it will come good in the end,
will come good.
then...
It will make a difference.
It would make a difference to us, but you have to then ask, well, why did Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng not go to the OBR before they actually announced their mini-budget?
Yeah, there are some questions there. And Frank, now this one, I don't know if this is right, Frank, but I'll take your word for it. It says, I can't understand why the taxpayer is discounting electricity for owners of electric vehicles and not discounting petrol and diesel for the ordinary man or woman.
Yes, we need to check on that, don't we?
I suppose we are. Yes, I suppose if you're plugging it in at home and we're getting the price cap things, it's going to make a difference there.
Yes, that's true. In real terms, it would be cheaper to fill up your car with electricity than petrol. Maxine says, I work in the National Health Service. We received a pay rise that is now in real money terms a pay cut. The few will only hoard and tax dodge, taking money out of the economy. My parents are in their 80s. They received pension increases that wouldn't have covered the admin it took to notify them.
It's very difficult times.
It is.
The budget certainly did not deliver what I thought it was going to deliver, but if it generates that growth...
Well, we were saying at the time, weren't we, wouldn't it be nice to actually get an uplift, to feel somebody's in charge and doing something? And then when it did happen, it didn't really work that way, did it?
No.
Do you think we should hold firm and give it a go and see what happens? Or do you think, no, I mean, with the pound plummeting and everything going wrong, it's already
The problem is, what do you do? Because they've sort of said, well, if they did a U-turn on the tax cuts and all the rest of it, that would plunge the economy into recession because it would increase uncertainty and ideas of panic, and it's all going wrong. So we've got to hold fast
I
think.
What would you advise at the moment? Give us a call. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Now, with rising prices and people still working from home in lots of places, one town in Northern Ireland, Holywood, has decided to up its profile by making a total virtual tour of its business and retail sector.
The Chamber of Commerce has now launched the tour and says it's already seeing results. Dougie Beattie has gone to find out more.
Local businesses across the UK are facing many challenges, and improving footfall should help cash flow and the town itself. High streets are now struggling with the cost of living and exiting a pandemic. Since the time of Selfridge, shop windows have been used as a promotional tool. But now, one town is thinking outside the box and using modern technology on an old theme.
It's very easy. I mean, essentially it's mouse clicks. You move it around using a mouse or using the arrows on the keyboard. It's one button to move you into a different part of the business rather than constant click forward, click forward.
David Johnson has set up a pilot scheme that is putting Holywood in a new shop window.
So the way that this works is the viewers, when they first see it, will start from drones. They'll start above Holywood. There's 11 drones for them to choose from, which have been strategically placed above the town to cover the vast majority of the businesses. So they can pick the area they want to go to, and as they move around, the different shops in the area will be highlighted. They can choose a particular shop that they like to go to, and they'll actually physically zoom down to the front of the shop, and then they can go in and they can look around completely as they wish. And then they can get a lot more information, which is where this is really useful to the business. So they can get more information from video or from text. We can link it directly to their e-commerce store, to their website, pretty much whatever they like. So the strength of this really is in that it's a whole town marketing and promotional platform.
Leslie Waite is the head of the Chamber of Commerce and is very aware of pressure on business.
Surviving is not easy, it's getting harder. Fuel and stuff like that, this really is making a difference. So there's some shops are just on the edge. A lot of them are still okay, estate agents and stuff like that. That hasn't dropped, so they're doing quite well. But generally, it's tougher and tougher out there to keep going.
The pandemic saw just 5 retailers leave the town, but Leslie is hopeful for the future.
The town was dead for a while, but all of those 5 places are now filled again. So I think Holywood is a very lucky place, lucky or whatever it is. We sort of stand out from the crowd a bit and are still very, very prosperous around the town. So it is a good place for business.
In uncertain times and rising costs, the Chamber felt it could not stand still and have decided to embrace the future.
I think it's a fantastic new way to do business, to get people into the town. Even if they're not going to come, we're going to come to them and show them what we've got.
This historic town, with its own maypole, may now show others a whole new dance. Dougie Beattie, GB News.
I didn't know there was a Hollywood there.
No, I didn't.
Because Dougie was saying Hollywood, but actually the locals were saying Hollywood. Yeah, lovely. They ought to put a big sign up on
All back to Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Looks like I'm going to have a look around Hollywood.
Virtually.
Virtually.
He loves his shopping online.
Yes, I do. Mind you, how would I get any of it delivered?
Well, yes, because Royal Mail workers are back on strike today after a meeting between the union reps and the company stalled. The Communications and Workers Union says around 115,000 of its members are joining picket lines this morning.
Well, this latest action tees up 19 strike days between now and Christmas, including around Black Friday. Well, let's talk to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's at Royal Mail's Beeston delivery office in Nottingham. So, Will, it's all going to go pretty quiet. It's going to create quite a backlog of mail, isn't it, quite quickly?
Yes, well, the CWU themselves said they expect this to have a dramatic impact, particularly in the run-up to Christmas. This weekend was already planned action, but it was only earlier in the week that we heard of this 19 days of additional strike action. So that would lead right up until Christmas, and also on significant days like Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Of course, those are big days for online shopping. Now, the CWU General Secretary, Dave Ward, said that this is a significant announcement, but it's one that matches the level of anger held by its members at the Royal Mail Group and the way that they've been treated. Of course, this is to do with pay. CWU says they had a 2% pay increase imposed upon them. That figure has gone up slightly during the months of discussion, but they also say that they're having conditions forced upon them due to the changing nature of the mail industry. Of course, there are fewer letters being sent in this day and age, but there are more parcels being sent, and that's what Royal Mail says this is about from their angle. They say that they're a business that's losing £1 million every day and must change faster in response to the changing business environment. It's very cold here today. I will say it's 6 degrees, but there are lots of people on the picket line behind me, and they say there are going to be more people. Of course, this is the biggest day of strike action so far for Royal Mail members, 115,000 of them up and down the country at mail offices just like this one. And of course, it comes at a time when we're not just seeing strikes for people that might be postal workers, Royal Mail, Post Office. We're also seeing it on the rails as well. We're going to have another weekend of strike action from ASLEF members as well as RMT union members as well. And the reason that this is all quite significant for this week particularly is because we saw at the Labour Party conference, Sir Keir Starmer announced that public energy company, if he was in power, if the Labour Party was in power, they announced Great British Energy that would be publicly owned. So public ownership has never been in the headlines, certainly not since 2014 in this way when Royal Mail Group was first sold off. And I think quite an interesting little caveat of that conference was when Dave Ward, the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, said to Keir Starmer he'd like to see him down at a picket line. He even offered him a bacon butty. Whether we will see that change from Labour Party policy to say Shadow Secretary, Cabinet shouldn't be down on picket lines, because we saw Sam Tarry, who was the Transport Secretary, the Shadow Transport Secretary, sacked from his post when he joined a picket line. Whether we see a change in policy as we see the growing popularity of this Labour Party, we will have to wait and see whether we do see any of those significant people, maybe Keir Starmer, on a picket line this weekend.
Well, we shall be watching closely for that. Will, thank you.
And do stay with us, because we've got lots more to come, including a look through today's papers.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
6:39, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's take a look at today's newspaper front pages. And we'll go to the Eye first. Tories fear wipeout after 3 weeks of Truss as Prime Minister.
The Guardian says Liz Truss is going to hold emergency talks with the head of Britain's independent fiscal watchdog. Well, that's happening today.
And then the Telegraph runs with the news that benefit payments are set to fall in real terms after a government initiative to cut spending.
The Express, their headline says the Queen died peacefully of old age, with her children Charles and Anne beside her.
The Daily Star's a bit bizarre today. On its front page, it says that we're all going to be taken over by robots. And it's going to be as bad as a nuclear war. I think they've just been watching too many movies.
Yeah, well...
Science friction, they say. Well, at least it's something different.
Well, there is real concern about AI. Everyone talks about AI. It doesn't actually exist yet.
No,
it's not actually
it doesn't.
a thing.
It's never been proven, has it?
No, but when it does happen, they'll learn exponentially and then decide that we don't need us
They
anymore.
have to pass the Turing test, don't they? Yeah.
No one's ever passed it yet.
No. Well, no machine has ever passed it yet.
So there you go. No sentience there yet. Let's go through the papers then with Benjamin Butterworth from The Eye and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Good to see you both.
Morning, both.
Good morning. Let's kick off with The Eye, should we, Benjamin? And 3 weeks of Truss as Prime Minister. It doesn't seem to be going too well so far.
No, 3 weeks of Truss, and, you know, there was 10 days of mourning in that period. So she's had, I think this is her 13th working day as Prime Minister, technically speaking. So it's quite the feat that, according to this poll that's on the front page of The Eye and other papers, Labour is on 54%. That's a 33% lead, the biggest ever recorded by YouGov. And I think what's more concerning for Liz Truss and the Conservatives is how Labour has got to this figure of 54%. Because, you know, sometimes parties have terrible results. Labour was, you know, in the low 20s, as the Tories are right now, shortly before Gordon Brown didn't do too badly in the 2010 election. But if you drill down into this, 17% of that gain is from people that are directly switching from Conservative voters to being prospective Labour voters. So these are the people that matter. It's not sort of fringe people or Lib Dems or Greens piling on, which is what Jeremy Corbyn generally saw his poll boosts from. These are Tories that, well, people that voted Tory that no longer wish to. And you look at things like the lead on the economy. They've got a 17% lead there. Now, it's only a couple of months ago that Labour was it was the most popular party on the economy for the first time in 12 years. Now it's got a massive lead. It's ahead on the NHS. It's ahead on being in touch with people's normal lives. It's ahead on who people think will make the better Prime Minister. And so I would say that while often you can dismiss polls at this point in a premiership, if you dig down, the results are really, really bad for Liz Truss and the Tories. And I think because she's just become Prime Minister, this is the one moment when people are looking, right? They pay attention because they want to know what they think, what they're going to do. And she's used that one moment to do just about the worst thing imaginable.
Well, it's interesting. Charles has been in touch. Morning, Charles, who says, I think the government has got it the wrong way round. They seem to be bringing in policies guaranteed to get them voted out of office.
I mean, that's quite a... yes, I'm afraid I have to agree with that, because it is quite difficult to understand quite what she is actually going for, because it is perhaps the worst set of polls I have ever seen at this point in a party's history. To have a new leader in for 13 days and to be on this kind of deficit.
But you could say how brave. She's done something that she believes, and Kwasi Kwarteng clearly believe is the right thing to do, even if it's going to be unpopular at first. Is that brave?
There is some bravery there, and I did start going out defending this, saying it was a bold budget, because we had to do something different. You can't just keep repeating the budgets of previous, because it hasn't worked, and we have been in a rut and it has been stagnant. And I think some of this lead that Benjamin was just talking about, we've just had Labour Party conference. So everybody has seen...
Yeah, but it's a massive lead,
politicians.
33 points, isn't it?
I know, and I'm not trying to make it all out. I'm not blaming Starmer, as some of my party have blamed for everything. But I do think that there is a natural bounce after a party conference. Doesn't matter whose party conference it is, because those politicians have been out there, they've been speaking, they've given their big speeches on the stage and set out policies, and people go, oh, yes, I remember blogs speaking.
I wonder what
remember
sort of
seeing.
reception she will get at her conference.
Well, I think this is going to be a lot more tricky to pull off. I really do. But Labour had nothing to lose going into theirs. We have absolutely everything.
Oh, it's interesting because on the Times, I mean, she did these radio interviews, didn't she?
She did a round of local radio, BBC local radio.
Where she just kept saying she has the right plan.
And I think we are stuck in that rut of perhaps if you keep saying it, it'll become true. And unfortunately, the media round yesterday just proved that you can't keep parroting the same lines. And I think what was interesting, every single broadcast that she did, the same information came out. Didn't matter what the question was that she was asked. And there seemed to be no life, no personality, no admittance that she could see things were wrong. And I think that goes down really badly. I also think she underestimated hugely local regional radio stations.
Why do you think she did it? Why do you think she did local radio?
Well, I suspect because they got 5 minutes each, and so it's, a lot harder to dig deeper into the problems in 5 minutes. And so I suspect she thought it was an easier ride. It is a tradition that Tory leaders do these local radio rounds just ahead of the conference. I think David Cameron was particularly keen on them. But I think what she misjudged is that when you have a national political editor or presenter, they often, particularly, this set of Conservative politicians, they go, oh, well, you're too Westminster bubble, you don't understand the real issues. Well, you can't say that to someone from, Radio Tees. It's a lot harder. And I think that when they were getting their listeners to put questions, when they were quoting questions from their listeners, it was much harder for her to rebuff. But what stunned me was the way that she didn't seem able to explain her ideas. I definitely believe that she's a very intelligent woman. We hear that she's a very hard-working person. And so I'm flabbergasted that she seems incapable of explaining what she did, why she did, and what's going to happen. And I think that's a basic that everyone should expect. And if she can't do that now, when she's setting out ideas that she had most of summer to plan for, then what's it going to be like if something comes unexpectedly?
Yeah. Well, let's move away from all that just for a bit, because I know we'll be coming back to it a lot this morning. Yes. Claire, can we have a look at the front of the Express, where we've had the death certificate of Queen Elizabeth. She died from old age, apparently.
She did, and I actually think that's just the loveliest. I know that sounds bizarre, but just to put it down to old age, she was 96. And I think we could all see that she was incredibly frail, but carried on working to the last minute. And I didn't want my Queen to die of anything nasty and horrible. And I think old age is a really graceful, peaceful way.
It's quite comforting in a way for us, isn't it?
It is. I think the time is interesting, 3:10 p.m. And obviously the country didn't find out until much later, but some of her family didn't find out until some time after that. But it was...
Well, the PM was told at 4:30.
Yes, that's what I understand the country told at 6:30. But it seems that some of the family members, I think Harry in particular, found out roughly around the same time as the rest of the country. But she was there with Charles and with Anne. And I think this is a perfect way to sort of finish this chapter of our history.
Isn't the death certificate itself interesting?
It is.
Because, it records everything it has to. Princess Anne signed the sort of witness bit. And it said for occupation, it said Her Majesty the Queen.
Yes.
That was her occupation.
That was her occupation. And to list out all of the names of everybody and your residence address is Windsor Castle. I mean, it's just beautiful, really, for something that's so sad. I think this is such a fitting tribute, and it's just so lovely that they've put it out there for us to see.
It is not. I mean, my grandma died of old age.
Yeah. That's what was on hers.
Yeah, it was on hers. And we also said, oh, she'd be really pleased at that.
Yes.
It's quite a nice...
It is an achievement, and it's a quiet and peaceful and graceful way, I think, to leave.
But it's natural, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I just think it's absolutely beautiful, and I love the fact that they keep printing that photograph of her still working. Almost a day.
Just 2 days before we lost her. Yeah. It is incredible that she did that.
I think also it was sort of watching her final years was watching natural death. It was someone simply slowing down, still enjoying life but not being able to do as much, and explaining that to the country and the rest of the world as she did in those last couple of 2 years.
Would that we could all do that.
Oh, yes.
So many people, you think, particularly during COVID and everything, had terrible ends to their life.
Yeah.
And thank goodness the Queen, at least, she got through COVID, didn't she? And she...
And still stayed sharp. I think that's the bit. Still stayed very
She did,
sharp.
and she got hold of the new technology and was
she was
doing
brilliant
video
on Zoom and
conferencing
everything
with
wasn't she?
people, and I just think that's fantastic.
And to actually keep going long enough to see the old Prime Minister out and the new Prime Minister in.
Exactly.
And then, to go and die of old age. Yes, it's the best possible thing.
But I think also, there's no disputing her commitment to her work, that she did that 2 days before, and she got a red box the day before, but it was the Zoom meeting she cancelled that evening saying she was tired. But I think it also shows how, your mind can affect how long you live. The fact that she lived to do that last duty seems like less than a coincidence, that she was carrying on to get the job done, and then she was ready to go.
I think so.
I think that's true. For a lot of older people, they recognise that there's a job to do. And they keep going
They
until
do,
a certain
they
time.
don't like to give up, do they?
Well, you've got to give up now. Because we're out of time. Claire, Benjamin, we'll see you a little bit later on. Thank you very much
come
indeed.
back. Now, Menopause Month starts tomorrow, and new research by QVC shows 41% of women haven't ever talked to their own children about it.
Should you?
Well, that's what I was wondering. Would you?
Parents said they'd rather talk about children's hygiene, puberty and sex, adding to the number of women hitting the menopause and feeling unprepared.
Celebrities such as Strictly Come Dancing head judge Shirley Ballas are trying to help shift the taboo, they say. And women are now going to tell us about the changes they experienced.
To be honest, I never thought about menopause. It throws you out of sync.
I was completely out of tune with my body. My heart would go out of beat. That feeling of anxiety. Hot flushes.
Lack of libido.
Weight gain. Brain fog. Dry skin.
Brittle nails.
I just had a meltdown.
Some feisty ladies there. Gen M is an organisation that helps people manage menopause. And here to tell us more now is co-founder Heather Jackson. Morning, Heather.
Good morning.
Hello. That was the first question that both Stephen and I were thinking earlier, is should you talk to your children about menopause? Why talk to your children about it?
Because it's a societal issue and it impacts everybody. We talk about puberty, no problems whatsoever. It's become something of the norm. And actually, we should do the same here now with menopause. It's a natural transition for most women. And actually, it is like the adult puberty. And the more people that we bring into the conversation, the more we can understand and support it.
I don't want to sound sort of insensitive, really, but I sort of get the impression menopause is talked about a lot. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised to hear that some women are feeling very isolated with it.
Well, would you be surprised to know that the QVC report, of which we're really pleased with as Gen M, the menopause partner of brand, have encouraged companies like QVC to help raise the awareness of menopause, because their report has shown that only 1 in 10 women are prepared for menopause. That suggests and means that 9 out of 10 women in the UK are actually unprepared for menopause. Now, if we look at menopause like the marathon, you wouldn't get up and run a marathon unprepared with the wrong kit, without any training, in a pair of slippers. You'd actually prepare, train, eat the right food, get the right exercise. We have to remember that the menopause can last up to 15 years for a woman or anyone else in this position. And actually, it is the biggest marathon a woman will ever enter. And she needs to be better prepared mentally, physically, and emotionally. But society also needs to help do this with her.
I think there's still a taboo to it. Why aren't women talking about it more?
I think it's the fact that, I don't want to go into blame mongery here. We are where we are. The past is the past. But I'm a 53-year-old perimenopausal woman. And actually, I'm the first generation of women to have the ability to live longer post-reproduction than pre-reproduction. Now, that's an incredible legacy. And actually, I want to show that you can swing from the chandeliers. You can thrive. We're at the best of our lives with our skills, our talent, our experience, our friendship groups. This is a time now to absolutely own and thrive through this. And that's why with QVC promoting this on their site, with qvc.com, with their Menopause Your Way content absolutely helps to destigmatise the taboo of menopause and make it as natural a conversation as we can possibly have. Because until we actually normalise the conversation in society, we can't support and really thrive through that period, truly.
OK, Heather, thanks very much indeed for joining us. As we were saying, it's Menopause Month starting tomorrow. Meanwhile, there's... thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to politics.
Oh,
John
right,
says,
yes.
Morning, Stephen and Anne. My older brother lives in Leeds and has voted Tory for over 40 years. He used to rip the Labour posters out of my mum and dad's house window when we were younger, but he's told me now he will never vote Tory ever again for the rest of his life because this was a budget for the rich and super rich.
Well, it's a bit extreme, that. If you ask me, you've got to consider Christine's a bit more balanced. She says, I've always voted Conservative, but can honestly say I wasn't too happy with the latest budget, but I'm willing to give it a chance.
See, I like Tony's idea. He says, we're just back from 10 days in warm and sunny Gozo. And now we're back, we find the country in a mess. What we need is a cross-party committee bringing in experts on how to get us out of this mess. And a lot of people have started to say that. What about, if it's such a crisis, why not get a cross-party view on it?
Maybe that's the way forward. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots more to come in a couple of minutes.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence across Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening's rush hour. A lot of spray and surface water on the roads, blustery conditions through the Channel as well. But that rain does get out of the way, and then we're left with a whole raft of showers packing in from the west. Slightly milder nights, but we'll still drop down to single figures, and it won't feel very pleasant on Saturday morning because it'll still be quite blustery, not as windy as today, and we'll get a mixture of sunshine and showers. With the winds coming from the west, it'll be western areas that see most of those showers. Northwest Wales, northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Not many getting to eastern areas, so a decent chance here could stay dry. Thickening cloud could bring some more persistent rain into the southwest later on. Temperatures maybe a touch higher than today's values. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, out the breeze. That breeze easing further on Sunday. There'll still be a few showers, mostly in western Scotland, but for most places, a dry and a bright day on Sunday. But do watch out for that wet and windy weather today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Prime Minister is under pressure to make a U-turn on her mini-budget as a YouGov poll gives Labour a historic lead over the Conservatives.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 30th of September. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, radio, online as well. So wherever you are, you can take us with you. These are your top stories.
Well, the Prime Minister Liz Truss is going to hold emergency talks with the Office of Budget Responsibility to address the ongoing fallout from the Chancellor's mini-budget.
Elsewhere, Russia's President Vladimir Putin will hold a formal independence ceremony to recognise the annexation of 4 regions in Ukraine. The Kremlin says these 4 states voted to join Russia. Ukraine has dismissed the votes as a sham.
And a new portrait of our monarch is released. The Royal Mint has announced new coins bearing the image of King Charles III.
I was looking online, actually. The Royal Mint call it an effigy. It's the first effigy of Prince Charles.
That sounds a bit...
It does sound weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it is an effigy.
Okay.
So there you go. It looks very nice.
And he's looking the other way, isn't he, from the Queen? Look, every time you change a monarch, they look a different direction.
And he's not wearing a crown.
Oh.
Then his grandfather didn't wear a crown either, George VI.
Oh, how interesting.
So I don't know why that is, but there you go. If you know, then you can let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Lots to talk about today, lots of politics, as you can imagine. But we were talking about, of course, it's a postal strike today, and there are going to be several more before Christmas.
19,
I know, before Christmas as well. So get your shopping done early, I say. Helen says, when I was a child, the postman would be there at 7:30 in the morning, then 12 noon, and sometimes at 6 p.m. We lived in a village 5 miles from the nearest town, and in the winter of '63, he delivered on skis. Today, I'm lucky to get 2 deliveries a week.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting?
Changed.
Second post. I used to like the second post.
Yeah.
But no, it's all. I just think. I mean, if you're striking today, get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'd love to hear your perspective. I just think the Royal Mail, the unions need to be very careful because there are a lot of companies now who don't use the Royal Mail.
That's right.
You've got all those Amazon drivers and things. You're going to put yourself out of business, are you?
Still like your postie, don't you? Your postman hat.
Well, you do. It's nothing against the post workers, is it?
No.
So let us know.
And
I
that's
just think you've got to be
fascinating
careful.
about Charles not wearing a crown. Why hadn't I noticed that?
Don't know. George V
Because the Queen didn't she?
Queen did. George VI didn't.
How weird.
But yes. But it's interesting getting the terms right. So effigy, from what you see on the coin. People were talking about his logo. But that's his cipher.
That's his cipher. That's not a brand logo.
It's not a brand. It's not a monogram or anything. It's a cipher.
A cipher.
So it's getting all the language right with these things.
Because these things are ancient traditions, aren't they? Very important ones to some.
So there you go. Well, look, let's return to politics, should we? Because we just can't get away from this at the moment. The Prime Minister is holding emergency talks with the head of Britain's independent fiscal watchdog. after the Chancellor's mini-budget continued to unsettle the financial markets.
The Treasury Select Committee has now pushed for an economic forecast to be published a month earlier than normal to try to restore confidence in the markets. And this comes as benefits payments are set to fall in real terms, they're saying, because that's going to try and save £5 billion worth of the spending that the government's going to do.
Well, look, are you confused by all of this? Well, if you're not alone. If you are, let's shed some light on it all with economics commentator Laurie Laird. Morning to you.
Good morning to you both.
And I've got a lot of faith in you, Laurie, because we spoke to you the morning before we got the details and you were pretty much spot on.
And you gave me a hard time for being gloomy, didn't you, both of you? And as it turns out, I was pretty optimistic. It turned out to be so much worse than any of us anticipated.
Where were you and what did you think when you heard Kwasi Kwarteng's announcement?
Dropped. And it felt like Kwasi Kwarteng couldn't stop himself. It was one tax cut after another. And then I think his final sin, the markets had pretty much anticipated these tax cuts, perhaps not as much as what he suggested. But then he went on television over the weekend and said, don't worry, guys, there's more to come. We're toying with the idea of even more of this. And I think that's where the markets woke up and said, wait a second, there's nobody driving the bus here. There is no adult in the room. And that was when sterling first fell out of bed. It was in Asian trading on that Monday after he spoke over the weekend.
So this meeting with the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, and bringing out their report in that, earlier than we were perhaps expecting it would be out. Is that going to make a difference? Is that likely to stabilise the market?
It's helping a lot. And that story, there have been rumours of this going around since sort of late yesterday afternoon. And I think that's one thing that has stabilised both the bond markets. And we talk so much about sterling. If we get some time, let's talk about bonds, because it's pretty important here. And people feel they don't understand them. They're easier than you think. But that rumour started going around late yesterday, and that stabilised things. As for what's going to come out of this meeting, probably nothing, but I think it's massively important and symbolic that Liz Truss goes and it acknowledges that the OBR has some importance, and it is important.
Yeah, but which begs the question, why didn't she do it before the announcement?
Who knows? Because the OBR made it very clear that they were prepared to rush through some forecasts. They said they wouldn't be great forecasts, but it would be better than nothing. And the OBR is important because it's apolitical. It's not attached to either party. It's the best guess we have of an accurate assessment of spending plans.
So tell us about bonds, because we talk about things like bonds all the time.
Is this what we call it? Is this gilt?
Yeah, this is what we have a much better, I think, a prettier name for
please
them here.
Explain it.
Complicated. Let me say, you guys are probably going to cut me off halfway through, but let's try it. The government doesn't have its own money, right? Its money is what we pay in taxes. The government spends more than we give it. So it's got to go out and borrow money somewhere. So if you were, it's like the government going to this massive bank. It issues these things called gilts. It's a way of borrowing money through the open markets. Now, who buys these gilts? It can be any number of people. It can be pension funds are big buyers, because gilts are often, the borrowing terms for a gilt can be anywhere from 10 to 30 years. Pension funds need longer-term investments to pay out over a longer period of time. So lots of people buy these things. Until very recently, gilts were considered incredibly safe because the UK is going to pay things back, right? That has changed so much because we have to borrow so much. There's this supply of gilts in the market, so interest rates have to go up. Think of it, if you're going to go to your local building society and say, I want to borrow $1 million or £1 million, they're going to say, that's fine, but we're going to make you pay a really high interest rate. Much higher rate than if you were to borrow £10,000. Why am I in dollars?
It doesn't matter either which way.
So this is what's happening. Because we have to borrow so much more, interest rates are going up.
So that's why gilts, as they say.
I lost you guys halfway through that conversation.
But basically, our whole economy is based on how these gilts are doing.
Yeah, well, it's based on how much we have to borrow. The more you borrow, the bigger you are as a credit risk, so you've got to pay more to do so.
Right. Oh. Look, this was all about... Look, this whole budget was about growth. Now, growth would really help everybody out, wouldn't it, if we see the market really grow?
What does growth mean to you?
Well, it means we've got more money to spend. We've got that. Wouldn't that bring interest rates down and all the rest of it? And everyone's got more money in their pocket.
I think the point I'm making is the government hasn't defined what they think growth is. I mean, growth in theory is the economy growing more quickly, more people work, more people earn more money. But the government's talking about growth in these weird, mysterious terms. They haven't defined what they think it is.
Oh.
I always think, yes. That's what stunned me, because I always think of growth as just being a healthy economy where everything seems to be going sort of sensibly.
I mean, growth is a thing, and in fact, I wanted to. We should have new numbers out over the past couple of minutes of what the economy did in the second quarter. First estimate is that it contracted. You want to get on your computer there, we can see what it.
No, I haven't got it here,
did. But growth is essentially the economy keeps growing, but you want the economy to grow more quickly than population.
Growth 0.2%.
We were revised up to 0.2%?
Yeah, it's up 0.2% over 3 months to June.
Really? That's a huge revision. It was originally down 0.1%, which would have meant we were possibly in a recession. Big upward revision. So growth was a little bit better than we thought it was.
Right.
How is it affecting the property market? Because that's the next worry, isn't it? People are worried about their pensions being affected at one end of the age range, I guess. You look to the others, people trying to afford mortgages to buy houses. Let's find out what's going on there as well. Joining us now to tell more is the property expert Jeremy Leith, who's on this side of the table. What's the news? Have the figures just come out?
Just come out literally about 2 minutes ago, so I haven't read the full details. But
can we hear Jeremy all right? Are we hearing? Yes, we are. Oh, sorry, there was probably...
The interesting point is zero. You think zero means nothing, but actually it does, because it's the monthly change. And it just shows it's a bit of a calm before the storm, because these figures clearly reflect what was happening a few months ago, people's buying decisions. But now, wham, we've had this big change, and all of a sudden, people are having second thoughts about buying property.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's happened in my own family. My son was about to buy a house, and I think luckily now, he didn't get settled with the mortgage in time, which is a relief to me, but terribly disappointing to him. And is that how things are going to go generally?
Well, I don't think so. I think that there will be more momentum in the market, at least for the next few months, because, of course, a lot of people have signed up to mortgages, and some more figures are coming out later this morning, which will show that. And, of course, with rising interest rates, they want to take advantage of the lower rates that they've negotiated before they go up even further. So I think there will be some momentum for the next few months at least. And then those that are deciding to come in will wait and see what happens with interest rates.
What about the mortgage deals that are on the table, though? Because it seems like a lot have disappeared.
Of course, yeah, about 40% they were saying have disappeared. But those
that's
ones...
huge, but that's huge.
But that's enormous.
Yeah, it's enormous. So those are for new buyers, the people that have already negotiated the deals. I think the lenders will stand on those deals and keep to them. And those people who've negotiated will want to keep them before rates go even higher.
What does all of this do to the general economy? Because, I mean, the housing market's a pretty good indicator, isn't it, Laura?
Well, the housing market is such a barometer of health in this economy, and so much wealth in this country is tied up in property prices. Difficult to say. We've called a crash in the property market before, and I think one thing that's going to happen, one thing that's a truism with UK property, is even when you have ups and downs, there still are many, many more people who want to buy a house than there is supply, and I think that keeps, and you may disagree with me there,
No, you're absolutely right.
That keeps the floor under the property market. Yeah. But the property market is so important in so many ways. If you move house, you buy furniture, you employ somebody to paint your walls. There is an enormous ecosystem of people who are employed through the property markets.
And there's another one, if I can just say, Stephen, that when people feel good about their house prices, they go and spend money in the shops as well. So it's a great, it's a feel-good factor. It's a barometer.
An Englishman's home is his castle, isn't it? That's what they always used to say.
We're not seeing any big on the ground. You know, I'm in the business every day, and we're not really seeing big changes on the ground yet. But I think people are pausing, seeing what's happened. They've had this big wow, and they're seeing what that means and how it affects them.
If we've had 40% of mortgages sort of withdrawn from the market, what's left? I mean, are they necessarily good, healthy mortgages to have?
Well, put it this way.
Or are they tougher?
Well, put it this way. Lenders don't want to lose money on what they're giving out. So if they're in danger of doing so, I think you'll see a lot reintroduced over a period, depending on which direction interest rates go. I think there's been an immediate reaction for obvious reasons. On Friday, a lot of people were feeling very good for them, very happy with themselves, and then all of a sudden, Monday, Tuesday, things start to change. So I think it can change again. There's a meeting today. They're trying to calm nerves. Confidence takes a long time to come, but it goes very quickly, and vice versa.
Do you think there'll be... Sorry, I was going to say, do you think there'll be a statement from the OBR today?
That's a very good question. I suspect there won't be anything from the OBR, but I suspect we will hear from a guy called Mel Stride. This is an MP who has such importance that nobody has ever heard of, but he's the head of the Treasury Select Committee. He's a Conservative, and he has been
he's been critical of this budget, hasn't he?
So critical, and particularly critical of the fact that the OBR hasn't brought in, that there hasn't been independent assessment. Take it with a grain of salt. He was a big supporter of Rishi Sunak, but he has been so vocal in trying to bring the OBR into things. I think we'll hear a statement from him that's more likely than we'll see anything from the OBR, actually saying we met Liz Truss and everything's wonderful. I think it'll come from Mel Stride.
What's your thought, Laurie, on waiting and seeing what happens? Because any changes are going to take a while to see. Growth, whatever the government thinks growth is. Do you think we are likely to see what they say we're going to see within 12 months?
I suspect that we may see a quiet delay in these tax-cutting plans. And if you looked at Liz Truss's, round of interviews yesterday and the quick interview that Kwasi Kwarteng did, they really both wanted to stress the energy package, which went down pretty well. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about these tax cuts. They were talked about in theory that, tax cuts are great and we want to get the economy going and we believe this in theory, but they weren't discussed in detail. They really wanted that focus to be on the energy package, and it feels a little bit like they're trying to distance themselves from those unfunded tax cuts and trying to get the focus on the energy package. So I wouldn't be surprised if quietly things were delayed.
Interesting.
Isn't it fascinating? Yeah, there's a lot of manoeuvring going on, isn't there?
Just to find out, because the economy's grown 0.2% over 3 months to June, does that mean the Bank of England was wrong when they were saying we were already in recession?
Possibly, because they were basing that on their forecast that the economy was meant to contract in the third quarter. The initial estimate was we contracted in the second quarter. That's two consecutive quarters.
Yeah.
So it does mean that we could be in recession, but if we are in recession, we weren't in recession a couple of months ago.
Okay.
That sounds like splitting hairs, doesn't it?
When we were going through COVID and we were saying we must follow the science, and then it became apparent that the scientists disagree. Is it the same with economists? Do you feel like, obviously Liz Truss is absolutely convinced that they're doing the right thing, and yet others seems to disagree so fundamentally. You can only imagine that economists are the same as medics.
Absolutely. And I think there's probably more disagreement amongst economists than there are in medics, because it's harder to measure economic outcomes and you're measuring something that's very, very far in the future. There's pretty much a consensus amongst economists, though, that what was announced last week is probably not the greatest path for the UK. And we even have a couple of economists, a guy called Julian Jessup, who has been very supportive of Liz Truss, going on the airwaves and saying, maybe this isn't such a very good idea. I've never seen as close to a consensus amongst economists as panning this economic plan. There really is a consensus here. Yeah, do economists get it wrong? All the time, but you got to sort of go with majority here.
Doesn't fill you full of confidence, does it?
It really doesn't. Jeremy, Laurie, thank you very much
thank
indeed.
you. Let's bring you up to date, shall we, with the latest news headlines. And as we've been hearing, the Chancellor's being urged to use levelling up funds to stop tenants being forced out by soaring rents. The National Residential Landlord Association wants Kwasi Kwarteng to use £1.5 billion to unfreeze housing benefit rates and expand mortgage interest relief.
Charities are warning high energy prices could harm children's development. It comes after a YouGov poll found that a quarter of parents have cut back on the amount of food they buy in order to afford other essentials.
Migrant children could be at risk of being mistakenly sent to Rwanda, according to the Refugee Council. A report published by the charity says 94% of children it supported last year were wrongly considered to be over 18 by the Home Office.
Hurricane Ian is now heading towards South Carolina after pummeling Florida. At least 10 people have been killed there. Wind speeds of 75 miles an hour are expected to bring potentially life-threatening flooding when it makes land later on today.
And the Royal Mint has unveiled the new 50p coin featuring the face of King Charles. The coin will enter circulation by the end of the year, replacing those featuring his mother, the late Queen. But a memorial coin range will be released on Monday to commemorate her life and legacy.
Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold emergency talks today over his country's response to Russia's annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions.
Well, the Russian President Vladimir Putin was going to sign documents later today proclaiming Moscow's victory on territory where sham referendums took place earlier this week.
Well, let's talk to Defence Editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, who's across all of this. Of course, morning to you, Robert.
Good morning.
What are we to make of all of this? I mean, it seems laughable from our perspective, but maybe not so if we were in Russia.
Well, we are in, to be ultra trendy, into the metasphere here, that there's a lot of virtual reality going on. You will get in Red Square, indeed, after a signing, an announcement by Putin that this is part of sovereign Russia and Russia will defend itself, and then there'll be a rock concert. And how are they going to defend it? They are sending, allegedly now, call-ups. They're not recruits because some of them are veterans, but they're told to bring their own tents, their own cooking material, their own food. He's got to put, if he really means that they can defend this through the winter, another 100,000 in. He hasn't got them. He hasn't got fully trained troops to do that. That's why, in terms of the propaganda, the virtual war, the messaging has been very, very interesting, and a lot of it is digital, the way the war is being fought, in a way that the Russians didn't understand and the Ukrainians proved very, very good at. They're very adaptable, they're very good at improvising, and that's how they've made up with the lack of numbers. But in the propaganda war, Zelensky will say, we're not going to give in, we're going to stand on the lines. They're fighting very hard, and it's pretty ghastly fighting around Kherson, for example. But overnight, his speech was to the minorities, the ethnic minorities in the great Russian Federation, saying, what are you doing coming to this war? This isn't your war, coming from places even like the fringes of Kazakhstan, where they are very fed up with what's being told them about this now being a war. It's gone from a special military operation to a war of national defense. And that is where Putin is extremely vulnerable, because his one instrument was, we have the third or fourth mightiest army in the world. It doesn't look so mighty now, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, we hear reports, don't we, from Russia where, mothers do not want their sons going into the war. And young men particularly are fleeing over the borders to just get out of Russia to resist being conscripted. But we can't figure out what Putin thinks he's going to achieve by this.
Well, it's figuring out what Putin thinks is so important now. And I think that as things converge on him from the circle round him, and it's primarily two groups who really need to be questioning him unless they go in for, as I said, the kind of bloodbath with these raw recruits. They're not trained properly, they're not equipped properly. The two groups are, one, the old securitocracy, his old mates formerly from the KGB, now in the FSB police, and the other is the generals. And as far as we can make out, the more discontented of those groups is the generals, because he fires them, he blames them. There'll be a lot more blame over the weekend, by the way, for the failures. The one thing I think he's going to be much more wary about is nuclear blackmail, threatening the nuclear card. And I think it's for very, very interesting and rather nitty-gritty, granular reasons, because it's actually no good. It looks as if these tactical weapons that they bring forward are not terribly good, or rather the vehicles they're on are not terribly good. Back to it being digital, and we can see everything. We can see, once they move, we'll see it.
There's a problem here, isn't there, in that a natural escalation, if you like, and our guest in the last hour was saying this, that now the Ukrainian forces, supported by NATO, are, the equipment, not boots on the ground. They're not, if they move into these regions now that have been annexed, Russia is not going to see them as defending Ukraine. They're going to see them as invading Mother Russia.
Well, that's the 2 + 2 = 4 logic of Putin's thinking. But it's crazy because we've got the 4 oblasts, as the districts are called, and Russia isn't in full control of any one of those four. Further to the east, they have greater control, but they're on the line. But when you take Donetsk Oblast, they've only got a portion of it. Kherson, they can't even maintain a civil government in Kherson because they get bombed and trashed by these medium-range rockets, the HIMARS, the kind of weaponry that, as you say, that NATO has supplied. I think the big question is, and it's the thing that Putin is banking on, is that you'll get Ukraine fatigue among the EU and NATO. And I think it's going to happen first in the EU. They'll be working like crazy on the new Italian government at the moment to be influenced. They'll be working on Ursula von der Leyen. They'll be working on the Germans. They know the Finns, the Poles, the Brits, the Romanians even, the Czechs, and even the Swedes are a no-no. They're hard line. They're very worried about it. And bombing the pipelines, if the Russians did do that, that would upset the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Finns more than anybody because they've had intrusion in territorial waters for years and years and years by Russian submarines. It's very interesting that what I sense, though, is that Russia is behind the beat. That somehow what Zelensky, and it's not just Zelensky, it's actually the military genius behind him, it's like a great either card player or tennis player. They play the unexpected stroke all the time. They play the unexpected ploy. They have proved so much better at basic things like improvisation, stripping down all the Russian kit that they capture quickly, turning it round, bolting onto their own equipment. That's even astonished allies like the Brits, where they know, actually, this come as you are, do it yourself, Ukrainian army is far better at innovation than the British.
Their sheer stamina as well. I mean,
well, that's the thing. But that's the thing I think that the Russians have got to be wary about, because do you remember we were talking about people initially leaving Ukraine, coming and with the Ukraine, helper Ukrainian refugee schemes and so on? They're going back now.
OK, Robert, we've got to leave it there.
Weekend. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Thanks.
Very much so.
Look, we've got lots more still to come for you, including all the sport with Paul Coit. That's in just a couple of minutes. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio, and online. We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
7:29, good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Shall we talk some sport? What's happening in the sporting world? Paul Coit is with us.
Let's do that, shall we? How are you?
I'm fine.
It's all right. No, it's certainly not. I was just being friendly. I was just saying, how are you? It's not like I'm going, how are you?
Yes, I know. I wonder what you
don't know, but you've always seemed a bit suspicious, Paul.
I am suspicious, but apparently that's part of my charm.
Well, I think
Is it? Yeah.
My suspicion. There's a few things going on. First thing, London Marathon, which is happening on Sunday. 42nd London Marathon, I believe it is now. 26 miles around London. I mean, I love it. It's a great event. It's a fantastic event.
See, I've got to be honest, I hate the marathon.
Why?
But that's because I used to live in Docklands years and years ago, and it just shuts it all down. And you can't. I used to do a shift like this.
Yeah.
And then couldn't get home till 2 o'clock.
Once a year, you can put up with that.
50,000 people around London raising millions and millions of pounds for charity because you can't get to work for one day.
Yeah, I think what is brilliant about the marathon is that it isn't just about running, funnily enough. It's nearly every runner there has a reason they're there. And there's usually a wonderful family backstory or something like that. Yeah. And I just think that's what's so wonderful. What?
Lunacy.
No, well, maybe, but, you know, they're doing it for a reason.
I mean, it's a good thing, but it's just, I mean, I can't. Have you ever done it?
I have, yeah.
Have you?
I actually lied about my age. I was 7. I still think I'm the youngest person ever to do it because I was 17 when I did it. And I lied about about my age. And the oldest woman in the race beat me by 45 minutes, which is my claim to fame. And the other thing is that, I don't know whether this is a shape of things to come, but they said, when you cross the line, you know, you'll get your photograph taken. So I remembered to dip over the line like that.
You did.
But it's got 5 hours 30 across the top. So like that extra 100th of a second was good. So the picture looks great unless I could just like erase the time on top.
That's what Photoshop was invented for.
That's exactly. That wasn't invented in those days. That's the thing. But Mo Farah was supposed to run, and he pulled out just the day before yesterday with a hip injury. So I wonder about Mo. Mo's 39 now, and I just wonder whether it's time to pull the plug on the career. You know, it's been an amazing career, and gold medals, Olympic medals, etc. But it's almost like that every sports person... We did it with... We talked about Federer, didn't we? We said the same thing.
You've got to know when to bow out.
And your body usually tells you, so maybe it's time
bow out
that you should actually
before your body lets you down.
Exactly. So anyway, that's on Sunday. We've got Hugh Brasher, who's the race director, who's the son of Chris Brasher. Now, Chris was the original race director.
Oh, right.
And was one of the pacemakers for Roger Bannister when he broke the Formula
Wow.
1. That was his dad. So Hugh has kept it in the family, and he now runs the London Marathon just like his dad did.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I love the family story.
What's going on with Anthony Joshua? It's not signed on the dotted line.
Oh, this is just taking forever. So we've got Tyson Fury on Monday said, right, you've got a deadline. If you want to fight me, you have a deadline, and it's got to be signed by the end of today. The deadline came and went. It's just like Neville Chamberlain with a piece of paper. And so we've waited, and then he said, well, you've missed your chance, that's it. You know, and started insulting him. You're not going to be able to fight me now. Then comes out of the woodwork and says, OK, you've got until the end of the week now. Now, it would be a huge, huge fight. It's the millions and millions of pounds. It's the fight that Britain wants to see. Anthony Joshua, former world champion, of course, and he lost twice to Alexander Usyk. The chances are he would lose to Tyson Fury, who is, in my opinion, the best heavyweight there is in the world still. And it's just it's the fight everybody wants to see. But the problem is, when you've got so much money involved and there's different TV companies, it's so much more complicated than just saying, well, let's just do it, because it's just going to take forever.
Yeah, you get locked into all sorts of deals, don't you?
Exactly. I just hope it happens. December the 3rd is what they're talking about. So whether it does, whether it doesn't, neither will surprise me. I mean, there's a friend of Tyson Fury I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, look, is this likely this is going to happen? You know, what's he saying? And he said, I'll be honest with you, from one day to the next, I don't know what Tyson's going to do. So where we go with it, I don't know. But it's still up in the air. So we'll have to see.
Who's going to buy Everton, just to round us off?
Well, it's the Kaminsky family. That's called Cam Sports. Now, this is not definite, but so much American money now going into the Premier League. You know, of course, Manchester United and Arsenal, and now we see Chelsea as well with Todd Boehly. So it looks like they could be interested in Everton. Everton's another great sleeping giant that would be attractive.
I thought it wasn't for sale.
Well, this is it. Farah Bashiri. You make a very good point there, because Farah Bashiri has said that. You know, of course, a very rich man, but everything is always for sale
Yes.
at the right price. You know
Absolutely, it's the price that counts,
that.
isn't
It
it?
is, of course it is. So, you know what? We talk about sport, but it all comes back to the money. Everything goes back to the money.
Everything comes back to money.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's the way of the world.
Some people aren't short of a bob or two. Lucky
Correct.
them. Paul, thank you. We're going
Back to Anne.
We'll catch you a little bit later on.
Look forward.
Do stay with us, however, because in a couple of moments we'll be having a look through today's papers.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online. We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
"7:36 morning, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Right, shall we go through the newspapers right now? We've got with us Benjamin Butterworth from The Eye and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Welcome back. Looking very sunshiny, I must say, Benjamin. Right, where are we starting with? Oh, Claire, tell us about this new calorie-cutting exercise.
Oh, you see, now somebody's groaning next to me already.
This is depressing.
About snack labels. Now, I actually think this would be better. The proposal is to put on, say a Kit Kat, for argument's sake, the amount of exercise that you would have to do in order to burn that off. Now, I don't like calorie contents on labels. I think that is a really bad move, especially on restaurant menus. I think it causes a whole heap of problems.
But you think this is better?
Do you know what? I do, because I do think it would highlight that perhaps if you were to eat that, you're going to have to move. We all know that if we're going to eat, then we need to do the exercise, calories in, burning it off, calories out. We all know that. It's very, very simple. But if there's just a reminder on that box of biscuits that says, if you have 3 of these, you need to go and do a 20-minute walk.
It won't be a 20-minute walk. It'd be like if you ate a Kit Kat, probably going to take you about half an hour, 40 minutes to run it off.
Well,
run it off.
But then that's much...
Then do you want it, really?
Exactly.
And I think
exactly. If it says 110 calories, I would think, well, I can save that a bit later on, or I won't, have tea or something.
Yeah.
But if it actually just says you're going to have to do a 30-minute run,
then you think really
I would think much
carefully.
harder about eating it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, the only time I run is to the wine shop at 10:55, to be honest. But do you know what? I think it's a good idea, because I remember vividly when I was at school, and I grew up in Manchester, and they said that a Mars bar, you have to walk the full length of the Trafford Centre twice. And I can still remember that to this day. And I mean, I never bought a Mars bar again, but the fact I bought every other chocolate bar conceivable probably means that it didn't really work. But it meant something. It was a tangible way to measure the exercise I'd have to do.
Exactly.
So I think it's a good
Who's
idea.
going to bring it? Is the government imposing this?
Well, no,
or is it certain food companies, or
This
what?
was a study on obesity. It was the International Congress on Obesity in Melbourne.
Oh.
So they're looking at it, and I mean, I just think it's really interesting.
I hope
Loughborough
everyone who
University is starting to do
I
a
hope that
study on
everyone who
it.
goes to the Obesity Congress in Melbourne is stick thin. They better be so thin, these people.
What?
Don't worry, you can
Because-
still have your, you can
because
still have your chocolate treat.
If they're not stick thin, there's something wrong, isn't there? If they're attending
Well,
an
you-
obesity,
you'd
telling
think
us
that
how to do our live
people
our
might like to
lives.
preach,
Maybe they
not
understand how
practice.
difficult it is, and they're just trying to find another way.
I actually think that's better. I think that somebody that has suffered from an obesity problem is actually better placed to start looking at these measures because they do understand.
Yeah.
Somebody that is...
It's all do
you
as
know,
I say,
stick
not
thick.
do as I do. Isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think we all need to take our own responsibility, but I think this little nudge is in the right direction.
I
And
do as well.
nudging
Mind you, I
somebody-
can't see many companies food companies being willing to go along with it.
No.
So basically, they're doing something that's going to put you off buying their thing.
True. I mean, I have to say, I often go out for like a walk in the evening to be healthy, and then I'll go and pick up a bag of sweets
On
to
the way
keep me
back.
contented while I'm walking, and it really defeats the object.
Or you walk past a McDonald's on the way back just to make sure. Yeah, I know.
Yes. Benjamin, let's talk money then, should we? Guardian's got it on the front page, meeting with the Office of Budget Responsibility today.
Yeah, so this is the people that sort of give advice on what effect a budget is likely to happen. And they offered Liz Truss that advice, and Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor, and they refused that before last Friday's mini-budget. Well, this Friday, they're going to meet with the head of the OBR to ask him for his advice. And there's a quote on the front page of The Guardian which says that meeting with the Office of Budget Responsibility today is like trying to read the manual after you've broken the thing, which I think a lot of people will sympathise with that argument because they offered this advice before they put it to the country and before it went wrong. They didn't take it. Well, now they've changed their mind and they want the help.
Well, they're being forced to do it, aren't they, because of the way the markets are responding?
Well, arguably, reality is forcing them to do it. And I think, you know, it struck me as incredibly bizarre that they didn't want these forecasts of what would have happened to the economy. You know, surely a budget is having all the numbers in front of you and understanding the effects of the different decisions you could make.
And it would help them sell it, wouldn't it? They'd be able to say the OBR predicts that this will work.
But I think, unfortunately, they had gone down the rabbit hole of thinking that it was a fiscal event, it wasn't a budget, as we kept being told last Friday. And they'd gone so far down the route of saying this is what we must do that they believed it and they didn't need anything, you know, scattering up the press at all to take away from it. And then they sort of accepted that they needed to publish some of this advice. But it wouldn't have been until November the 23rd. You know, when you just sort of think all of this was wrong and it was all the wrong way around, and if they'd had the advice, if they'd shared the advice, then we may not be in the position that we
They
are
must
now.
have seen the advice.
Yes, but
I should imagine they did, which is why they didn't want to take it.
Yeah, but
and
then
that's a really bold
then what's the
statement.
morality of going ahead and announcing something that you've already seen the OBR disapproves of?
Yeah, and there are a lot of questions to answer, and I can understand now why people are calling for Parliament to be recalled, because they will want to know, when did you see this advice? What did you think of it? Who did you speak to? All of those questions people want to ask. And they are very, very important. And they're just hiding away from it. And I think that's one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah. Oh, well, we shall see what comes out of that if we hear anything at all. You're a happily married woman. Why have you picked the Mail looking at divorce?
At a 10-year high.
Yes, no, but I am very, very happily married.
Better say that. He'll be watching.
He will be watching. I'm very happily married, but I also have been divorced.
Oh, have you?
I have,
Oh,
previously.
scandal, breaking news.
Scandal. And it's a very, very painful, horrible process. And it was nasty. I had to go through a court case, I had a young baby, so a lot of things had to be decided. So it's quite saddening to see that divorce is at a 10-year high because it means that other people are also going through that hell. But this no-fault law, I'm not sure quite how I feel about it. Divorce is a really tricky legal process and it is emotionally very, very difficult, especially when there are children involved. I think people would assume that if there's no fault, it's almost the same as signing a piece of paper, just going, oh, I don't love you anymore, bye. And I kind of think that it makes marriage a little bit less valued. And I know that that's...
I agree.
From somebody that has been divorced, I really did try, and I really tried to keep it together, and it didn't work. And then to have to go through this horrible process of laying everything out there for a judge to look at and pick over is awful. And it took a good couple of years before I actually came out of that sort of low...
But that's what the no fault is meant to be achieving, is doing away with all that horrible detail.
But you are still losing a relationship that you had. Obviously, when you married that person, there was the intent to stay with them for the rest of your lives. You love them. Whatever it is, you still have the emotion attached to it. So I don't think even if you call it no fault, you can't ever take that away from it. The passion involved, the guilt, the love, the anger, everything that goes with it. You can't just remove it just because you're saying, well, actually, you know, we just don't love each other. You still have all of that enmeshed. So I'm really sad to see it's at a 10-year high. I'm very pleased if people are getting out of relationships that they shouldn't be in.
I mean, do we know whether this figure is being skewed by, you know, lockdown, things like that?
Yeah, you can only imagine that, you know, we know lots of relationships broke up because of lockdown, because suddenly people were forced to live in each other's pockets and realised they didn't quite like it. But I think the no-fault divorce thing is surely a good thing, because, you know, often marriages break up because simply they stopped loving each other, it stopped working, their lives changed.
It makes it easier to stop trying, though. You've got to work at a marriage.
But then when you have to try and, you know, the short list of things that you could use as faults often fuels antagonism. It can be quite painful on the kids who are seeing those rows. I think it just makes things worse when actually often people have tried incredibly hard to keep their marriage together. They want to move on. And why bring this new antagonism into it of having to have the fault? Why not just let them wrap it up and get on with their lives and let, you know, look after the kids?
Well, let us know what you think. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
Love to hear your stories, actually.
I'm not into... I think it cheapens things a little bit, but then I've not been through it, so there you go. Look, thank you both. We're out of time. We shall catch up with you both in the next hour, though. Look forward to that.
Now, charities are warning that high energy prices could harm children's development this winter. It all comes after a YouGov poll found that a quarter of parents have already cut back on the amount of food they buy in order to afford essentials.
Migrant children could be at risk of being mistakenly sent to Rwanda. That's according to the Refugee Council. A report published by the charity says 94% of children it supported last year were wrongly considered to be over 18 by the Home Office.
And Hurricane Ian is now heading towards South Carolina after pummeling Florida, killing at least 10 people. Wind speeds of 75 miles an hour are expected to bring potentially life-threatening flooding when it makes land later today.
The Royal Mint has unveiled the new coin featuring the face, the effigy of King Charles. It will enter circulation by the end of the year, replacing those featuring his mother, the late Queen. A memorial coin will be released on Monday to commemorate her life and legacy.
Now, tomorrow is the start of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and with 1 in 7 women diagnosed with the disease in their lifetime, Avon are encouraging people to learn the signs.
Now, when asked, 30% of younger men don't think they can get breast cancer. That's a myth. All genders can be affected.
So they brought out this new boob census barometer. They crunched the figures and found that 2.7 million people have never done a breast cancer check on themselves.
The research also found nearly a third of women that do check their breasts learn how to do so by watching TV. So let's get some advice from Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence, who's here. Good morning to you. You would have thought that people were checking all the time, in the sense that it's been talked about. And the breast cancer campaign has been so successful. It's such a huge campaign. Are women just getting a bit tired of it, perhaps? Is that part of the problem?
I think that the breast cancer campaign and everything that's been done to raise awareness has been successful and progress has been made. But actually the stats show from this boob census by Avon that still a third of women are not checking regularly. And I think there's a number of factors for that. Some of it may be that people are in denial that it can happen to them, particularly younger women. We know that breast cancer can also affect younger women, but being a younger woman myself, you tend to think it's something that will happen later in life. I think people also have a lot of anxiety about checking. They think that if they look, they might find, and that can actually deter people from checking. You know, in this census, they found that a quarter of women didn't feel confident in checking their breasts, didn't feel confident they'd know what signs to be aware of and what to do if they did find something. So I think there's an element of anxiety as well.
Yeah, and it's also sort of scientifically. I mean, a lot of people have lumpy, bumpy breasts, don't they? Which is, you know, nothing wrong with that at all. You have to. So they actually say, don't look for lumps. It's sort of just get to know your own body.
Absolutely. I really like that phrase about getting to know your own normal. Everyone's body's different, and you know, we really want to empower women to know what's normal for them and be really comfortable with their own body. As you mentioned, breasts can go through changes throughout the menstrual cycle, and as you get older with different textures. Some lumps can be normal. Actually, in most cases, if you find a lump, it won't turn out to be cancer. So I really want to encourage people, if they feel anything that deviates from their own normal, they should get it checked out.
Do you know, I've been presenting programmes like this for so many years, and we were talking about it 40 years ago. I'm shocked in a way we still need to remind people of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. You know, although breast cancer treatments have really improved survival. We've made so much progress. Actually, the best thing that we can be doing is continuing to educate on picking it up early. That is the number one thing we can do. I think about 23% of breast cancer cases are preventable. So, you know, it is important to keep having these conversations, and I think that Avon are doing a great job at you know, championing that for Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
But it is interesting, isn't it, that all this is aimed at women? And as we said in the introduction, men can get this too. Now, I don't know any man who checks his chest for breast cancer.
Yeah, I think with any public health initiative, we tend to target the majority. Only 1% of breast cancers affect men. But you're right that anyone with breast tissue can be affected. So men, please listen to this as well and check your breasts.
What are men meant to look out for?
So anyone with breast tissue should check the same. So you should have a look and have a feel. When looking, you should have a look for any new asymmetry between the breasts, any skin changes, things like changes to the skin texture, puckering, tethering. Sometimes the skin can look a little bit like orange peel. You should also have a look for any new rashes, any nipple changes, so nipple inversion, a change in the position, crusting, bleeding or discharge. And also then have a feel for lumps, any new changes to the texture of the breast.
OK, lovely. Frankie, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Food for thought, as ever.
Yes. Boys.
Well, boys have got to do it too. They often say with a lot of this sort of thing, it's often people's partners who notice as well before you do yourself. So, you know, even if you're the partner, as it were, you've got a job, you've got a responsibility too.
Yes. Check upstairs and downstairs, gents.
Is that what they say?
Well, no, it's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, OK.
It's the thing to do.
It's a good slogan. It's a good slogan.
Oh, I should maybe market that.
Yeah, I think you probably should. Save some lives.
Now, back to politics for you, because the Prime Minister is under mounting pressure to take a U-turn on her mini-budget and borrowing plans after a new opinion poll gave Labour a historic lead over the Conservatives.
But with a mounting cost of living crisis, would the Labour government actually do anything particularly differently? Let's speak now to Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, who joins us now in London. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. How are you feeling this morning? On the one hand, you wonder whether Labour must be cock-a-hoop at the moment. On the other hand, the country still needs sorting. So what's your solution?
I'm angry. I'm not happy. I'm angry. What we saw a week ago was the biggest unforced error in British economic policy, perhaps in history, certainly in our lifetimes. And when you ask what we would do differently, I reject the entire premise of the economic approach the government brought to the House of Commons last Friday. I don't believe you can borrow money to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy. I don't think you can sack the permanent secretary at the Treasury. I don't think you can ignore independent forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility, not even let them produce a report, and then think you can get away with it. And what it means is not about opinion polls and who's going to form the next government. It means people who have mortgages or want to get on the housing ladder are now facing untenable pressure. It means the cost of what we're paying for Government debt is unnecessarily high. It means the value of sterling is lower and therefore everything else is more expensive that we import in. So frankly, I want to see the Prime Minister and the Chancellor behind me recalling Parliament, reversing that budget a week ago and telling us what they're going to do.
But reversing the budget's almost impossible, though, isn't it? In the sense that, that would in itself create so much uncertainty and instability in the markets.
Well, I think there is a reasonable question that this Chancellor and this Prime Minister may never get that back. I think that is a reasonable point. And of course, the feedback problem there is exactly as you say. The political instability therefore leads to further market instability as people have no faith and trust in the government at all. But frankly, the approach that they set out a week ago, I didn't believe in. I know it wasn't pitched to me, but the people who have a hugely significant role over our economy, individual traders and investors, people for whom we rely to be able to finance government expenditure and debt, they've got no faith in it whatsoever. And unless the government can restore some of that faith, this problem will not get better. It's only had a temporary improvement because the Bank of England said it would spend £65 billion over 14 days buying government debt in order to stabilise the market, to make sure our pensions industry didn't go off a cliff edge. This is an incredibly serious situation. I don't want to see Conservative colleagues having a glass of champagne at Conservative Party conference. They've caused this problem. Get back here and do your best to fix it. Ideally, step down entirely and let some other people take over.
Of today's meeting between the Prime Minister and the OBR?
Well, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? What we needed, that was a week ago to have the usual robust forecast we would be able to expect. We would have then had some information. You could ask me about specific measures in the budget. What do you think about this? Would you have done this differently? We can't do that because we haven't had the proper process that we would expect. And let's just reflect, when the Chancellor came to Parliament, he said that was impossible. They couldn't do it on the timescale that the government was working on. We now know that's false. So that will further undermine faith in all of the Cabinet, not just the Chancellor and Prime Minister, the lot of them. So yes, using and finally recognising that the OBR plays an important role in budgets in recent years is important, but it's a reflection that even they themselves recognise they've got it wrong. Let's have a little bit more of that and come back and see that budget reversed.
If things go, and let's hope, let's be honest, let's hope they don't go as wrong as some people are saying, because that's bad for the country. Forget politics, it's bad for the country. But if things really do start to spiral, then what about cross-party work on this? I know the government would have to invite you to do it, but would Labour be willing to do that?
Well, we have a completely different approach to the economy, so they'd have to be willing to listen to that. I would just say, if you look at the formation of this government, it didn't even try and include all parts of the Conservative Party, let alone other political parties. But you're right to say that this should be viewed as a crisis, and the impact on the British people should be the focus. Not the politics of it, not who's up or down within the government, but they've got to understand the scale of the problem they have created. When you talk about contagion, it's a complicated area, but essentially what we saw with the Bank of England's intervention is them have to intervene because British pension funds were so exposed to government debt, the gilt market, and therefore if the price of that didn't stabilise, there was the possibility of extremely serious contagion. Not on exactly the same way as the financial crisis with Northern Rock, but something that could have been of the gravity of that situation. And honestly, it is just simply not acceptable for government ministers to be out pretending this hasn't happened or that all countries are facing this. That is quite frankly untrue. And the more they dissemble, the more they present it in that way, the lower the level of confidence in the British government will get.
Jonathan Reynolds, we've got to leave it there. Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Looks a bit wet and miserable there in Westminster this morning, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
I think it's the start of winter.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Prime Minister is under pressure to make a U-turn on her mini-budget as a YouGov poll gives Labour an historic lead over the Conservatives.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. It's Friday, the 30th of September. Get my teeth in. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV, your radio, and as well online. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories this morning.
The Prime Minister is set to hold emergency talks with the Office of Budget Responsibility to address the ongoing fallout from the mini-budget.
Elsewhere, Russia's President Vladimir Putin will hold a formal independence ceremony to recognise the annexation of those 4 regions in Ukraine. The Kremlin says those 4 states voted to join Russia. However, Ukraine has dismissed those votes as a sham.
And the new effigy of our monarch is released. The Royal Mint has shown the new coins bearing that image, King Charles III. Not those, they're the old ones.
Yes, and as ever, you can join into discussions. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk. Michael, morning Michael, says, I got my first mortgage in the 60s. You had to save with a building society for 2 years, and then you could only borrow 3 times your salary. The excessive borrowing of 4 or 5 times joint salaries has resulted in the massive increase in property prices, irresponsible lending, and now the borrowers will pay.
Sort of right, Mike. I mean, I know exactly where you're coming from, but has that not come about because property prices increased so much that you couldn't get one on 3 times your salary?
You couldn't.
I don't know, but it was. I mean, I remember it being 3 times your salary, but you'd never get anything for that now, would you? Paul says we need a property crash, 25% or more, hopefully, make them more affordable for today's children. Things don't go up forever. Then you get negative equity for a lot of people, which is what happened in the 90s, and that was really bad.
And Patrick says, it'll take more than singing the national anthem through gritted teeth to convince the majority of people that Labour suddenly love everything British and aren't just obsessed with their obscure niche interests. I like the image of them singing the national anthem through gritted teeth.
People change, parties change, it all evolves, doesn't it? All evolves. But I mean, I don't know.
Whenever they play the national anthem at any of those big do's, the first thing I always do is see, you watch people's lips to see if they actually know the words.
Yes, see if they sing, at least have a go.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, look, Liz Truss is going to hold emergency talks with the head of Britain's independent fiscal watchdog, the Office of Budget Responsibility, after the Chancellor's mini-budget continued to unsettle the financial markets.
The Treasury Select Committee has now pushed for an economic forecast to be published, which would actually be a month earlier than normal, if you like, to try to restore confidence in the markets.
Well, let's talk to former Chief Secretary to the Treasury and one of our regulars, of course, David Mellor. David, good to see you.
Yes.
So, come on, what do you make of all this?
Make some sense of this
Help me
for
out
us.
here. Am I in a dream? I mean, is this a nightmare or is this really happening?
Sadly, it's really happening.
I couldn't have imagined anything worse. I mean, how on earth a new Prime Minister and, you know, and in many ways an exciting new Chancellor could have made such a mess of it? And they made a mess of it by failing to understand anything other than their own thought processes. I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng, everyone tells me, is one of the brightest men around. But I guess when you have to deal with a mega brain like that, you don't really have time to think about what other people are thinking. You know, someone once said to me, politicians should be pretty second-rate people because then they're interested in the public. I mean, I never had enough time, but my own brain was never a big problem to me. So I had to think about what other people were thinking. But I mean, to be serious for a moment, this is a disaster for the Conservative Party because once you lose your reputation for being able to get the economics right, you never recover from it. I mean, I was a member of a government when, through no fault actually of John Major's, we came out of the exchange rate mechanism. Don't ask me what the exchange rate mechanism is.
That's a long time ago.
But, you know, but that was 1992. He just won an election. And although then, over the next 5 years, the economy recovered very well. Kenneth Clarke was an extremely good Chancellor. The public never forgave him. And I was one of those who lost my seat in 1997. And 1997, the Tory party lost more than half of the seats they held. So while I'm a long way from believing that the opinion polls today are telling us anything other than what people thought yesterday, the reality is that the Conservative Party could be driven out of office, and not just driven out of office, humiliatingly defeated, because the public are not. It's you know, Chris Patton once said to me, at certain points in politicians' careers, a photograph is taken, and that photograph remains in the album forever. The photograph of Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss are people who thought that it was very clever to cut the taxation of the richest, but not to do it because the country was getting a reward, as happened in the Thatcher years, for having saved public expenditure, but just borrowing more money. And you think, what are these people on? So I think it's a serious situation. And I mean, I'm not one of those people who comes on and starts calling for people's heads, because I had to go through a lot of years when people were busy calling for mine. But I can't see how Kwarteng can recover from this. I really can't.
Well, it's the Office of Budget Responsibility is apolitical and it's there to advise on a budget that you're going to announce. Why would they have deliberately not gone to the OBR or actually asked the OBR not to say anything? And why are they going to them today?
Well, apparently the OBR were willing to give an opinion. And not only did they say no, but also they sacked the Treasury's main civil servant, whose whole entire life was about handling crises. I mean, I know one shouldn't, as a sad old git, I shouldn't get sanctimonious about younger people, but this is a bit like kids going into a firework factory with some matches and then saying, oh, look, there's a big bang. I really do feel that the government has got to appear to get a grip, and having ignored the market, they cannot get away with it. You know, let's say, for instance, they've got to borrow another 70 billion as a result of all of this. The public expenditure will go back to being one of the biggest claims on a budget. People think, oh, well, they're spending money, they're spending on the health service, they're spending on defence. They're not. They're spending it on debt interest. And the worry has to be that if, for instance, the market loses confidence in the government and changes the ratings for this government, they're in a total pickle. And that is why this business where they say, well, you know, dear Mrs. Thatcher, in a different context, you know, the lady's not for turning. Well, I tell you what, if Liz Truss is not returning, she's got real problems, because there isn't. The best thing for them to have done would have been to have said, look, we do want to make tax cuts. It's obvious, however, this is not the moment when people want this. We're going to suspend these, because after all, they're not coming into effect straight away.
If you did that,
and move away.
There'd be a vote of no confidence in the government, wouldn't? I mean, it would force a general election, wouldn't it?
No, I don't think so. I think it's 10 minutes. Don't forget, we've been to here before. Poor Dennis Healey, who I quite liked actually, was hauled off a plane. He was off on some venture somewhere. Hauled off a plane because the IMF basically called time on the Labour government. Well, they survived for another 3 years. And I think that the worrying thing is if it appears that Truss and Kwarteng have not learnt any lessons from this, blustering away, saying, well, it was other things, it wasn't a judgment on what we said about tax, but also not wanting to change course. They're getting a warning here that if they don't change course, it'll be a disaster, and only a fool, I'm not ruling out these two being clever fools are the worst kind of fools, but if they don't take a message that is being thrust in front of them, I think this government's got serious, serious problems.
But that message was put in front of them during the leadership campaign. I mean, they knew what they were going to inherit, didn't they?
Well, you see, the leadership campaign, this was a piece of self-indulgence, and anyone stupid enough to listen to me on a Wednesday morning here would know I took the view that that election campaign went on for too long, but also it was wrong to consult what is now a very small membership of the Conservative Party, backwoodsmen, and they were going to get it wrong. And of course, they did get it wrong, because don't forget, Liz Truss never got a majority from Conservative MPs. She got it from the backwoodsmen. And the worry has to be that they made the wrong choice, because as one, Sunak has a number of things that he got wrong as Chancellor. But when I hear Sunak speaking about the economy, I feel here is a man in whom one can put confidence. The trouble with Liz Truss is that for all the years that she spent in government, she never really was a leader of opinion. And the trouble with Kwarteng is he's been around for a relatively short amount of time. He has great self-confidence.
Well, yes.
Self-confidence is very good if you're a tennis player, and even better if you're a goal-scoring striker. Whether excessive self-confidence when you're a politician is a clever thing, I'm not so sure. I think he's about to prove that it isn't.
No, I mean, is that the fundamental issue here? Because, as you said, they're clever people. They're not stupid people. It seems remarkable that they've got into this with all confidence, saying this is going to turn the economy around, and the minute they announce it, everyone just says, no, it isn't.
Yes, well, it's turned the economy around, but onto its head.
Well, yeah.
But you see, the question is, at a certain point in life, everyone gets things wrong. The question is, what lessons do you then learn? At the moment, this bluster that, oh, well, it's not really a judgment on the tax cuts, this judgment, all back to this ladies not for turning nonsense, because actually, this is not the moment to discuss it. Mrs. Thatcher made quite a lot of turns while saying she wasn't for turning. That's why she survived for as long as she did. But the key lesson is that when Margaret Thatcher made cuts in taxation, including, taking in one budget, I remember I was a member of the government, it went down from 60% to 40%, the top rate of tax. But she could get away with that because the economy had begun.
Yes, because it was a
to turn
reward.
around. It was a reward. Exactly right, Anne. It was a reward. We're not being rewarded for anything. And a government that's borrowing money, I mean, to a ridiculous degree, is borrowing more to offer tax cuts to the best
To the
off.
rich. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but, I mean, I'm glad I don't have to try and explain that one away.
Yeah. David, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Sue from Lincolnshire, morning Sue, says, we've had 6 years of getting out of Europe. Then because of the pandemic, Brexit was sidelined. We've had a war in Ukraine. For all his faults, Boris was an optimistic soul, and we need that now. He wasn't given the chance to get on with the job. There's a lot of pro-Boris rhetoric going on at the moment.
I'm sure you'd agree with that, David, would you?
No, I think the problem is that Boris could have got on with the job, but chose not to. And that is, he will kick himself for the rest of his life. He had it all there, and he chucked it away.
Have you seen the latest drama about him?
No.
I recommend it.
I recorded it and I thought last night,
You'll love it.
Can I face it? Well, I should face it, should I?
Oh, yeah, you'll love it.
Get a bottle of wine.
Yeah, it's the new drama about Boris. He's played by Kenneth Branagh, who is unbelievably brilliant. There are many times you actually think you're watching Boris. It is, I think it's...
Perhaps if Boris had been played by Kenneth Branagh for the last 2 years, it would have been a better Boris.
Good point.
Yeah, they're not going to like that.
No, they're not. No, do let us know your views on
I'll
that
put
one.
my tin hat on.
Yes, that's hard, I think.
GBViews at
And think there's at least one
GBnews.uk.
person in a worse position than me. He's called Kwasi Kwarteng.
Oh, yeah. Isn't he just? Well, look, let's bring you up to date. Talking of Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor is being urged to use levelling up funds to stop tenants being forced out by soaring rents. The National Residential Landlord Association wants the Chancellor to use £1.5 billion to unfreeze housing benefit rates and expand mortgage interest relief.
Meanwhile, charities are warning that high energy prices could harm children's development this winter. It comes after a YouGov poll found that a quarter of parents have already cut back on the amount of food they buy in order to afford essentials.
Migrant children could be at risk of being mistakenly sent to Rwanda, according to the Refugee Council. A report published by the charity says 94% of children it supported last year were wrongly considered to be over 18 by the Home Office.
And Hurricane Ian is now heading towards South Carolina after pummeling Florida, killing at least 10 people. Wind speeds of 75 miles an hour are expected to bring potentially life-threatening flooding when it makes land later today.
Now, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold emergency talks today over his country's response to Russia's annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin will sign documents later today proclaiming Moscow's victory on territory where sham referendums took place earlier this week.
Well, joining us in the studio is Ukrainian Member of Parliament Alexei Goncharenko. Good to see you this morning. Thank you for being here.
Morning.
What are we to make of all of this? It's very, very confusing from our perspective to try and understand what Vladimir Putin thinks he's doing by annexing these regions in the way that he's done it. I mean, what do you think he thinks he can achieve by doing this?
I think it's normal that we can't understand him because we are not professional psychiatrists. So he is like a crazy tyrant. I think, but if we will try to find some reasons, I think we could find 2. First of all, he tries to cover his military failures, very serious, especially under Kharkiv. It's a level of Tsushima for Russian army and unprecedented, with some kind of political success to show that he is taking new lands, new territories. That is reason number 1. And also this is a gesture of desperation because he can't really move militarily, so he tries to do this. Second thing is he tries to make afraid of Ukraine and of the free world, but it doesn't work. Ukraine is not afraid, and the free world is reacting very good. He's saying, it's ridiculous with these 99%, you know. They even can't change this playbook for old KGB playbook, I don't know. In the real world today, 99% for something, I mean, it's craziness. And also he wants to make some kind of a gift to himself. He will be soon 70 years old next week. And all the procedures will finish to this. For us, it looks insane. But for their country and for him, it's absolutely normal.
Does it make it more difficult, given that he's saying these regions are now Russia? Does that make it more difficult for NATO to support Ukraine in fighting in those particular regions?
He can say, sorry, that London is Russia, like many Russian-speaking people here he can find. So nobody believes in this. So for NATO, it's nothing. And NATO will continue to support Ukraine with weaponry. I'm sure about this. But what is important, and that I want to underline, I think now, because more important topic is mobilization. It's there coming together. So now he tries to mobilize new hundreds of thousands of Russian men to send them to die to Ukraine. But these people will arrive in, I don't know, 2 months. And before they will arrive, we really have a window of opportunity to finish everything. Because I think 1-2 more military defeats, Putin's regime probably will not survive. And they're already cracking inside after what had happened recently. So in March, we lost this opportunity. When Russian forces, after failed blitzkrieg, were retreating from Kiev, unfortunately, Ukrainian army had not weaponry to purchase them. If we would have weaponry that we have today in March, everything will be finished in spring. Now we have a good moment to finish everything before they will arrive. But for this, we need more weaponry, finally long-range missiles, finally tanks, because for the moment we haven't received any modern Western armor, so tank, I mean. So that is something we really need, and this is a chance for us to finish everything very quickly.
Is that how this has to go, though, in the sense that if there was a move now against these 4 regions and they were properly retaken, that would then force people within the Kremlin, the generals presumably, to actually get rid of Putin?
Absolutely, and we don't need even to take all these 4 regions back. We just need 1-2 military defeats. And then they will, I think, do whatever they can to get rid of him, and the regime will change. And after this, Russia will be busy with itself for years. Probably they will collapse. I don't think that Russian Federation will survive all this story in middle term in the current borders. It will be like a Russian Empire collapsed 100 years ago, then Soviet Union collapsed 30 years ago. Now it's time for Russian Federation to collapse. I hope this will be the last imperial war of this empire.
Gosh, well, we all hope that. You're saying that it really could be a matter of months now. If you just keep on going the way you're going, with and we get the message that you need more support now, you could actually end this by the end of the year?
Yeah, I think we could finish everything in the weeks. If these newly mobilized will arrive, after this it will take new months, because this is a lot of people. They will not change the situation completely. I mean, they will not change the result of the war, because Russian state and Russian army, they're like a dinosaurs. Massive body, tiny head, and very tiny brain inside. So their problem is not in number of people. They're completely different problems. So mobilization will not fix it, but sure it will prolong the war.
OK, Mr. Goncharenko, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, it's a pleasure, any time.
Yeah, absolutely. Do stick with us, won't you? Because we've got more for you, including the latest on the post office strikes. That's in a bit.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence across Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening's rush hour. A lot of spray and surface water on the roads, blustery conditions through the Channel as well. But that rain does get out of the way, and then we're left with a whole raft of showers packing in from the west. Slightly milder nights, but we'll still drop down to single figures, and it won't feel very pleasant on Saturday morning because it'll still be quite blustery, not as windy as today, and we'll get a mixture of sunshine and showers. With the winds coming from the west, it'll be western areas that see most of those showers. Northwest Wales, northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Not many getting to eastern areas, so a decent chance here could stay dry. Thickening cloud could bring some more persistent rain into the southwest later on. Temperatures maybe a touch higher than today's values. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, out the breeze. That breeze easing further on Sunday. There'll still be a few showers, mostly in western Scotland, but for most places, a dry and a bright day on Sunday. But do watch out for that wet and windy weather today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Good morning to you, 8:24. Just a quick one from Martin, who said, something nobody has mentioned with Russia annexing parts of Ukraine. The parts that will be annexed, the people of fighting age will be conscripted to fight in the war against Ukraine. Well, actually, this was mentioned by President Zelensky.
Exactly, who said, if you've got no choice, join up and sabotage from within, which, of course, is hugely dangerous, but then they're in a terrible state of danger anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, so he has addressed that. I mean, you wouldn't want to be in that position, though, Martin, would you? I mean, it's absolutely horrific.
OK, here's one for you as well. Martin says, so the Tories are 33 points behind. So was it a good idea to push Boris out? He at least was a politician. I think they're male. It's going to be so interesting, isn't it, at the Tory party conference in the coming week? There are going to be a lot of people saying, we got rid of Boris for this.
I wouldn't want to be Liz Truss or Kwasi Kwarteng at this conference. Starts on Sunday, of course.
There'll be a lot of...
Will we see a U-turn on the budget before then?
Don't think so. They can't be seen to U-turn, can they? They just can't.
I don't know. Very interesting.
Have to come up with a plan B.
Well, it's when we've talked to people like David Mellor, right, whether you believe what he says or not. We've talked to economists as well, a number of economists. No one yet has said, oh, yes, no, this might work.
No,
nobody.
No. Although a lot of people are saying, give it a go, give it a go. So, well, we have got no choice, really, have we?
No, not at the moment.
Meanwhile, there are all sorts of other things going on in the country that's got to be dealt with by the government, including the fact that Royal Mail workers are back on strike today. They had a meeting between the union reps and the company, but those talks stalled. The Communication Workers Union says around 115,000 of its members are joining picket lines this morning.
Well, this latest action tees up 19 strike days between now and Christmas, including Black Friday. Let's head to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's at the Beeston Delivery Office in Nottingham. Morning, Will.
Good morning. Yes, well, this is just one of the delivery offices that are up and down the country, where outside you'll see a picket line. There's about 30 or 40 people outside this one, but 115,000 Royal Mail workers represented by the Communication Workers Union are on strike today. This is day 4. Tomorrow will be day 5. And then between now and Christmas, there'll be another 19 days of strike action. That will include Cyber Monday and its predecessor, Black Friday. So really significant days. The Communication Workers Union General Secretary Dave Ward says they're expecting this to have a dramatic impact on that peak period until Christmas. But here on a much more local level, we've got the Regional Secretary, Mark Harper. Mark, just describe for me that decision by these people behind me that the CWU represents to go on strike when we are so close to Christmas.
Well, you know, we might be close to Christmas, but we're here to protect our terms and conditions. Today we're striking for that. We asked for a pay rise in January. We received no answer. Then they imposed 2% pay on us, and then they also attacked our terms and conditions. These people behind us, will be starting later in the day. They'll be attacking the sick attendance procedure we have. They'll be attacking new starters. New starters will be coming in on different terms and conditions, and they're attacking the redundancy agreement we have. All the agreements they've issued notice on this week. And it's a fundamental attack on the union. What would you expect the CWU to do? We cannot just stand by and let these people's terms and conditions be destroyed, on the whim of a company who, say they're losing £1 million a day and yet managed to give, 700 million or so to shareholders in March and April. We have to stand up and fight today.
Yeah, of course, on that point, that's what Royal Mail says. They're saying they're losing £1 million a day, and they're also saying that they need to revolutionise in a competitive industry. Some of those decisions to change working conditions, some of them were supposed to be, if I remember correctly, decisions that you'd make together, but that's one of the reasons that Communication Working Union isn't very happy. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were working, up until a year ago, we were working really well with Royal Mail. Our lead negotiator, Tony Pullinger, and Simon Thompson were working well together. We were moving the company forward. And then, strangely enough, in January, around the same time that the P&O, problems started, where they were attacking unions there was a fundamental change in the way they seemed to be dealing with the union. Coincidence or not, I don't know. But, they then decided to impose pay on us, and then they decided to attack our terms and conditions. A good relationship which soured in a matter of weeks. Who knows why?
This is going to be a tricky period, 19 days of strike action between now and Christmas, but these people say there's good reason for it, but I'm sure a lot of people up and down the country are going to be worried about what's going to happen to their Christmas parcels as we do get towards Christmas.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Will, thank you.
Thank you. I suppose the answer to that is do your shopping early, or go and do it yourself.
Yeah, but you forget how much you rely on the post until it's not there, of course, which is the point of the strike action, I guess. Let us know what you think. Now, the inquest into the death of 14-year-old Molly Russell, who took her own life in 2017, is set to be concluded today.
After her death, it was discovered that she'd viewed disturbing content surrounding suicide and self-harm on sites like Instagram. Meanwhile, her family have since campaigned for tighter rules over social media content.
Well, Alice Porter is outside North London Coroner's Court for us this morning. Alice, morning to you. What evidence have we heard from the inquest so far?
Good morning. Well, the court heard that Molly Russell had viewed more than 2,000 images in association with depression and self-harm and suicide, and a number of these were shown and played to the court. And to give a sort of indication of how disturbing some of the content was, there was absolutely no way we'd be able to broadcast it. And a child psychiatrist who was giving evidence, he viewed the content that Molly Russell had been looking at in the events leading up to her death, and he said that he'd been unable to sleep properly for several weeks due to the alarming nature of the content, and said that it appeared to glamorise self-harm. We also heard from the head teacher of Molly Russell School in Harrow, who said it was an almost impossible task for schools to keep up with the risks posed by social media. But the court also heard from representatives from social media companies, including Pinterest and Meta, that's the company that own Instagram. And a senior executive for Pinterest said that the site wasn't safe when Molly Russell was using it, and that some of the images shown to the court he wouldn't show to his children. There was a different tone from Meta, who insisted that the site was safe and that the images that Molly Russell had been looking at were safe in lead up to her death, although that was very much refuted by the legal team for Molly Russell, who said that the material that she was looking at was unsafe, that it was provided by social media companies, and they argued that that ultimately contributed to her death. And that's really what this will sort of rest on today, is how far social media contributed to Molly Russell's death.
And what are we expecting today?
Well, Andrew Walker, who's the coroner presiding over this, he yesterday raised a number of concerns, and they were concerns about the algorithms used in social media to push content, which is something that I suppose we all sort of can see when we go onto social media. But in Molly Russell's case, because she was viewing already quite alarming and disturbing content, this was very much pushed to her even further. He raised concerns about the lack of age verification and in fact called for separate social media sites for children, and also complained about just the lack of regulation for the content on social media. But he did say that this 2-week inquest that's concluding today, that it is a rare opportunity to make part of the internet safer. We should not lose it and we should not let it slip away. Now, those are very, very robust comments that we had yesterday, and it will be really interesting to see what happens today, because this is very much a landmark case. Never before have we had a 14-year-old social media record so heavily scrutinised. Social media companies have made significant changes since Molly Russell's suicide, but depending on the facts and finding and the conclusion that we are expecting today from Andrew Walker, it could have profound consequences for social media companies.
OK, Alice, for now, thank you. Look, don't go anywhere. We've got much more coming up. We're going to take you through the papers in just a couple of minutes with Benjamin Butterworth and Claire Pearsall.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.8:36, my Twitter's gone a bit mad.
Oh, why?
But look at you shivering.
It's
very cold in here.
Frozen.
No, because we say,
Shall I show you my woolly blanket?
We haven't.
Woolly blanket on my knees.
Yeah, what you need in here. We're saying that we haven't heard from an economist who supports the Trust budget, and we haven't on this show. However, lots of you have got in touch to say Patrick Minford, who apparently was on GB News last night. Don't know whose show he was on, but I didn't see it. But anyway, Patrick Minford has said if they stick to their guns, in a year we'll have 5% inflation, 3% Bank of England rate, and north of 2% growth. Debt will fall, good for jobs, wages, enterprise, public spending.
OK,
So that's Patrick
can we hold
Minford.
you to that?
So, yeah.
It's just whether we can go through the year that leads up to that. Long-term measures can be much harsher, can't they?
I hope he's right.
In the short term.
I hope he's right. It'd be great for the country. But, you know, we shall have to wait and see. So there you go. So there is an economist voicing things the other way.
Shall we have a look at today's front pages of the newspapers? Looking first at the Eye, it claims that the public have turned on the government after the recent YouGov poll. because that's placed Labour 33 points ahead of the Tories.
The Guardian, meanwhile, says Liz Truss will hold emergency talks with the head of Britain's independent fiscal watchdog, that's the OBR.
The Telegraph runs with the news that benefit payments are set to fall in real terms after a government initiative to cut spending.
The Daily Express's headline reveals that the Queen died peacefully of old age, with Charles and Anne beside her.
And the Daily Mail says that Liz Truss has vowed to press ahead with her controversial and difficult economic plans.
OK, let's go through some of those papers then with Benjamin Butterworth from The Eye and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Morning to you both. I know what you're looking for.
You do, don't
There's
you?
one here.
Thank you very much.
Here we go. This is Claire's list, so we know what they're talking about this morning. Let's start with The Eye, Benjamin, and the new effigy of Charles.
Yes, it's been revealed. So there's going to be a £5 coin and the picture of King Charles III's head has been revealed. And now what's interesting about this, and I'll confess it was your royal reporter Cameron Walker who pointed this out to me on the way in, is that Charles is not wearing a crown.
I know, we were talking about this
Well,
earlier.
neither did George VI.
Well,
Why?
apparently neither did Elizabeth until she had the coronation. So it's not necessarily a precedent that they've all followed, but it is one that his mother did, that she didn't have a crown until after.
Does that make the coin now, then, very much collectible?
Yes.
Because it's only a short period of time now until he gets his crown.
If
they change it.
Well, indeed, although, there is precedent for it being changed. That's what, Elizabeth II did. Now, this £5 coin comes out on the 3rd of October, so it's quite soon. And I think the rest of the stuff with his face on it is going to be at a much later period. There'll be a special edition of the 50p coin for Queen Elizabeth II as well. But I think you make a very valid point that if you can try and get your hands on one of these, it's going to be the one. It's going to be the one British coin that's rising in value at the moment.
Absolutely. It'll buck the trend.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yes, which is better than the Mirror takes it, because their take on it was the new £5 coin soon to be worth 50p. There you go.
Well, the Mirror would.
Misery gods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking of the Mirror, top 20 songs, Claire. I think we're going nice and light-hearted.
No, this is for breakups.
No, this is for breakups. It was just one of those sort of really interesting things that everybody can remember. A breakup in their life and having a soundtrack to it. Those of us who are older than Benjamin can remember doing a mixtape.
Mixtape.
A mixtape. And you would always put those songs that you...
OK, what was your song then? Breakup song?
Breakup song. It would have to be something by sort of a Whitney Houston or a Dolly Parton, I Will Always Love You.
Oh.
But then you move to, sort of the anger stage.
Oh, yeah.
And then you'd want something a little bit more rocky, poppy type.
Oh, no, I wept and wept to Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But something like
George
Alice Cooper,
Michael.
Poison, is very good to get the anger out in your
I
heart.
had George Michael, I Can't Make You Love Me If You Won't.
Oh.
I can't make your heart feel something it
You broke
won't.
your heart to that,
Oh,
did
I did, yeah. When I
You
was a
broken your
teenager,
heart to any
yeah.
particular song?
No, I'd have to fall in love with someone to fall out of love.
Your time will come, inevitably.
Yeah, my breakup song's not yet been written.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, come on. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Get us off the politics just for a couple of seconds. Yeah, what was your best breakup song? Well, not best, it's just your memorable breakup song.
One that you sobbed to in your bedroom.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's cracker. So what...
It does. I mean, sort of in the study that was undertaken, it was a poll of 2,000 adults. 24% said a big night out also helped after a split. Now, I think we can all appreciate that. You're feeling in the doldrums, you're sitting on the sofa, you're in your leisure wear, and your friend says, right, no, come on. Get out the house, come on. And sometimes, you know what, a bit of Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, being sung, a bit of Mamma Mia, something like that, just to lift your spirits. So I think music has a really important part in relationships.
It really does,
life,
doesn't it?
And it can cover everything. So I liked the fact that we go from everything. We've got Amy Winehouse, Adele, Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah, but
no.
What are the songs? What are the songs? I can't quite read it.
So you've got Amy Winehouse is number one, Back to Black. I can kind of appreciate that. We go to Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You.
Yes, of course.
Fleetwood Mac, Go Your Own Way. So you can see sort of, the movement that you're going, and sort of down the list a little bit further, Beyonce, Single Ladies.
Oh, no.
Which is at number 18.
Seemed like a breakup song, really.
But why not?
It's about getting over a breakup.
Getting over
isn't
it, and I think this is the point.
It's like the "I Will Survive," singing it around the kitchen.
Exactly.
Oh, I will survive.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you go out with
Very
your friends,
important one.
you belt that one out,
Yeah.
you feel so much better.
Yeah.
Heartily recommend things like that.
What about Dolly Parton singing "Divorce"?
Yes. And I think, but that's it. But everybody has that little soundtrack. So it'd be really interesting to get some views as to what people would have on their soundtrack. So, we could all put a playlist together.
It's the misery chart, they call it. What's the top of your misery chart?
Quite good, though.
GBViews at gbnews.uk.
From that to serious matters, in the Sun, Benjamin.
Yes, so you'll remember Harry Dunn, who was killed. And Ansa Koulas, the wife of a US diplomat, for a while it looked like no charges for the allegations would come, but she's to appear in court, the 45-year-old from the US, and it looks like, according to The Sun, she's going to accept the charge of death by careless driving rather than by dangerous driving. And so the latter, dangerous driving, would carry a sentence of 14 years. Careless would carry 5 years sentence.
But she's not coming to Britain to
She's not. She's appearing in court via video link from the US, but she's expected to say, according to this Sun headline, "I did kill Harry," and that family might finally get some justice on those allegations.
Well, what justice can they get if she was found guilty of careless driving? She's never going to come here to she's not going to be extradited, surely.
I mean, there is a suggestion that she could have to come over here in the story. But there was a long negotiation between the US and the UK in which they resisted for a while. But I think under President Trump there was some movement on that, which is how we've even got to the point where it's being heard in a court in this country with her via video link. So yeah, that's what's expected to happen. And I think the horror of what that family went through, and then the twists and turns.
They've had to fight every step of the way to get any degree of justice, any recognition. But haven't they been strong?
They have, and that's, it's fair play to them. I'm not sure that many people could have done that. It's reported in another paper, in the Mirror, that the journalist approached her to see if she had any comment for Harry's family. And she looked visibly annoyed that she had been found. And I think that's what sits in everybody's mind, that she doesn't appear to be sorry. And I think that would be a real starting point. There seems to be no remorse. When you see
I can imagine that
photographs of her
she's been
laughing.
advised you don't say anything.
I'm sure
The
she
minute you
has.
say sorry, you're admitting some sort of a guilt. And legally, she would be advised probably not to. But she could have handled it better.
And I think that's, by looking visibly irritated and annoyed, that doesn't help. You know, put your head down, walk on, leave it at that. And you're right that her legal counsel would have told her to not say a word. It feels wrong. Everything feels wrong. Appearing by video link, I know that there are legal implications to her coming back to the UK.
Well, let's talk about. To be fair, she's got 2 young children, I think, hasn't she? If she has to serve a sentence, then let her do it in the States. At least the kids can see it or whatever. I mean, it's...
Don't break up
that would be fair enough, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just doesn't bear thinking about.
No, it doesn't.
It's
It's
awful.
just tragic.
Awful.
Terrible.
What's going on with the internet, Claire?
Oh, well, this is the story of pipelines that have allegedly been sabotaged by Putin.
Yes.
And what it would mean to the United Kingdom. We are all very, very reliant upon the internet, and those cables are laid under the sea in great big trenches. So if Putin was to perhaps continue along the lines of taking out pipelines, then you could find that the UK is without the internet. And I think it just highlights the security of the of energy to the United Kingdom, but then also the security of our communications. So this is becoming a much more serious issue.
What I can't get my head around with all this, in 2022, we're relying on cables being laid at the bottom of the ocean. Why is it not all wireless and satellite and everything else?
I don't think there's the capacity for that at the moment, and it's very expensive to keep putting satellites up there, and there's a limit, I suppose, as to how many you can have, and the security of the data that it will...
And we're laying new cables down between Morocco and Britain, apparently,
Oh,
yes, to absorb the wind and solar power coming from Morocco. We were already laying a new cable. So clearly it's the only way at the moment.
I mean, Elon Musk has used his satellite to help the people of Ukraine continue to have access to TV and internet and things, which has clearly been very helpful. But
Skynet, is that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
But I suppose, you know, if Russia wants to ruin it for an awful lot more people, then there's not the capacity to facilitate that from Musk's fancy thing in the sky.
You would need so many of them, and I'm not sure that there's the money to do it. There is the capacity in space to do it. I appreciate space is a very big thing, but you know, to have it near enough.
It takes us back to the 80s when we were talking about Star Wars and about them actually putting satellites up there that could shoot out other satellites.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's horrendous.
Absolutely, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility. If you want to take out a satellite, it's probably arguably easier to do that than it is an underwater cable. So.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. It sounds easy.
Well,
I don't know if it is.
NASA managed to shoot down an asteroid the other day.
Yeah.
It's not difficult to take out something that's floating around up there.
Oh, the scientist in me wants to scream. No, I don't think it is that easy. But they'd have to do it by lasers.
It's possible, though, isn't it?
Possible.
I mean, we are just looking at a whole new future of war as well, which is very, very frightening.
Oh, dear me, dear me, dear me. Let's talk about... Now, you've picked this one, Benjamin.
I have.
And I know why you've picked this one. It's because Queen Margrethe...
Margarita.
Oh, Margarita, there you go, of Denmark, has stripped two of her grandsons of their prince titles. But these are the two who are models.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, they're models.
No, well, it's 4 of her grandchildren.
Oh, 4. Well, two of them are models.
Two of them are models.
Oh, well, now, I mean, I don't know if you have the photo.
They
of
are the
particular
most
two.
good-looking young men you could possibly hope to look at. This is the Danish royal family, and it's fascinating. We think we've got intrigue going in our royal family, but they've got quite a lot of intrigue going on there.
Well, so yeah, 4 of her grandchildren. She has 8 grandchildren in total. So this is Queen Marguerite. She's the oldest monarch. She's the only queen left in Europe. She's been the Queen of Denmark for 50 years. She's a chain smoker. She loves riding roller coasters. She seems like a proper hoot. She's enormously popular in Denmark. And she's removed the royal titles, so Prince, Princess, from 4 of her grandchildren because she says she wants them to be able to lead normal lives. And it seems like, you know, this is not an act of aggression. It's something that those grandkids want themselves. And she cites that actually lots of royal families around the world have been doing a similar thing. Now, we think about this in the context of our own country. Prince Harry and Meghan, the question about whether Lilibet and Archie will get titles, as they are technically entitled... Wow, he's a handsome... You've broken my chain of thought there. Whether Archie and Lilibet will be Prince and Princess, well, I think this might be making it easier for King Charles to not award his own
Because
grandkids.
maybe Queen Margrethe is trying to do the same thing that King Charles now has said, and to slim down the monarchy.
Exactly.
But these, two particularly of these 4 grandchildren who are no longer princes, they are amazingly successful models because they are incredibly good looking.
No, you can't, but they are very successful, so there's nothing that would say
we haven't got a
they
picture of them
needed to have the royal title attached to it.
We'll talk about this tomorrow because we were wondering we should talk more about this because it's so fascinating.
You say you can't be a prince and a model, and yet, Stephen, you manage it every day.
Anyway, she sounds quite formidable, does Queen Margrethe.
You're not coming back on the show ever again, Ben. I don't care how nice you are to me. That's it. You're done. You're done. Thank you both very much indeed.
Yeah,
good to
thank
see
you.
you.
Thank you.
Now, here's a question, because I think a lot of people don't know what shingles is. If you're replying no, you're not alone.
Well, almost half of people who took part in a recent survey called Understanding Shingles couldn't identify the key symptoms and also incorrectly thought you could catch it from somebody else.
And even our own Eamon Holmes has had it before. It's really horrible. And he is also supporting Shingles Awareness Week.
Well, another advocate after his own personal experience is Strictly Come Dancing star James Jordan, who joins us now. Morning to you, James. Good to see you. So, I mean, what are the symptoms? What did you go through?
Yeah, I mean, it was very strange for me because I obviously my knowledge of shingles wasn't very good either. So I always thought it just happened to older people generally. I was on holiday with my mum, my wife, and my daughter, and I was in the pool. Felt like I had this really bad pain in my back, like it felt like sunburn. And I thought, oh, my wife's missed a patch and I've got sunburn. So I said to her, can you have a look at my back, please? And she went, oh, you've got a rash. Looks like a heat rash. Didn't think anything more of it. Went to dinner that night, and where I had my trousers on, it was down my left-hand side, and the trousers was rubbing on the blisters. And I got my mum to have a look at it because it was really painful. And that's when my mum actually said, I think you've got shingles. I got back from holiday, was still persisting, very painful, continuous pain as well. Went to the doctors and they said, yes, it's shingles. But unfortunately, you would have needed to come to us within 72 hours for us to prescribe anything to actually help. So eventually it went away after 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, it was more the fact I didn't know what it was. I was unsure what to do. And I think people's knowledge on shingles isn't that good when it lies dormant in 90% of us in the UK. Anyone that's had chickenpox could potentially get shingles. So yeah, I've teamed up with GSK to raise awareness, really.
Important to raise awareness because, as you say, it can lie dormant in people and they have no idea then what can be going on years later, years after they might have had chickenpox.
Yes, exactly. And some people, I was fortunate, and obviously I spoke to Eamon about it as well because we're doing this campaign together. We didn't have any long-term side effects, but some people do have long-term side effects such as nerve damage and things like that. So we were one of the fortunate ones. But yeah, it's quite painful and you can get it for quite a long time as well.
A sort of mental effect on you as well, doesn't it? It drags you down.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a continuous pain. It's like being sunburnt and someone rubbing sand in it continuously. It's not very pleasant. But yeah, we're just here to try and raise awareness. Obviously, generally it happens once you hit your 50s, 60s, 70s. There are even vaccinations for people once they're between 70 and 79, I think. But yeah, it's just raising awareness to the whole thing, really.
Oh, well, look, I'm glad you're through the other side of it, James. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
You sound pretty grim, man.
It is grim, and it can just,
Have you had it?
pop up. No, my father had it at one point. It can pop up out of nowhere and bring you down, and I think it's pretty horrible.
Yeah, dear me.
What about breakup songs, eh?
Oh.
Wow, that's got you going. Zach says American Pie by Don McLean. I listened to it on my way home after breaking up with my girlfriend of 2.5 years. Oh, I used to love American Pie, but it is quite sad sometimes.
Oh, Jean says my heartbreak song would be Jimmy Ruffin, What Becomes of the Broken Hearted.
Oh, of course.
Oh, dear me.
And Sarah says my breakup song was Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart.
Oh! Oh, yeah, that's a great tune.
What about Happy by Pharrell Williams?
No.
Debbie says that was my breakup song. You were obviously quite happy to break up, I think.
Dee says The 3 Degrees, When Will I See You Again?
Yeah.
Oh, dear me.
So you never forget those songs.
You don't, do you? Keep them coming through. GB Views at gbnews.uk, and we'll bring you all the top stories in just a couple of minutes.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence. Of course, Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening's rush hour. A lot of spray and surface water on the roads, blustery conditions through the Channel as well. But that rain does get out of the way, and then we're left with a whole raft of showers packing in from the west. slightly milder nights, but we'll still drop down to single figures. And it won't feel very pleasant on Saturday morning because it'll still be quite blustery, not as windy as today. And we'll get a mixture of sunshine and showers. With the winds coming from the west, it'll be western areas that see most of those showers. Northwest Wales, northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Not many getting to eastern areas, so a decent chance here could stay dry. Thickening cloud could bring some more persistent rain into the southwest later on. Temperatures maybe a touch higher than today's values. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, out the breeze. That breeze easing further on Sunday. There'll still be a few showers, mostly in western Scotland, but for most places, a dry and a bright day on Sunday. But watch out for that wet and windy weather today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Prime Minister is under pressure to make a U-turn on her mini-budget as a YouGov poll gives Labour an historic lead over the Conservatives.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Friday, the 30th of September. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK. On your TV, radio and online, wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories for you this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister is set to hold emergency talks with the Office of Budget Responsibility to address the ongoing fallout from the mini-budget.
Elsewhere, Russia's President Vladimir Putin will hold a formal, what he calls independence ceremony to recognise the annexation of those 4 regions we've been talking about in Ukraine. The Kremlin says these 4 states voted to join Russia. However, Ukraine and the rest of the world has dismissed those votes as a sham.
And a new effigy, as it is officially called, of our monarch has been released. That's what they call them when they put them on a coin, apparently. The Royal Mint has announced the new coins bearing the image of King Charles III.
And as ever, please do join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Well, when it comes to money, not the new coin, sadly, Kenneth says the pound has made back all of its losses of the past week. I, for one, think this mini-budget will reap rewards for the UK, given a chance. I don't know if it's made back all of it. We'll find out from the experts in just a second.
Absolutely, we will, yeah.
But I mean, it has bounced back, and we had those figures through, didn't we, about growth for the quarter up to June, where there was 0.2% growth, and it had been predicted that would be not a growth.
No,
Call it the other way.
Recession?
Yeah, a dip, a fall.
dip,
I don't know. So that's slightly better than we were thinking.
A plunge, a plummet.
There you go. But it's
disastrous words.
There's not a lot of people smiling about.
Steve from
budget.
Cleethorpes has been in touch there.
Oh, yes.
Steve says the serious matter of the economy will bring out all of Labour's big guns to do everything they can to bring down the government, including demonstrations, which will turn into civil disorder. I am a Conservative Party member who voted for Liz Truss, but reluctantly because I didn't like Mr Sunak. However, it could well turn out to be a mistake.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see, aren't we? This is the thing, and see what the government is going to do once they've had this meeting with the OBR, because that's what's happening today. Liz Truss is holding emergency talks with the OBR after the Chancellor's mini-budget continued to unsettle the financial markets.
The Treasury Select Committee has now pushed for an economic forecast to be published basically a month earlier than usual to try to restore confidence in the markets. But what are the chances? Well, let's get on the money with our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan.
Oh, Liam. So, meeting with the OBR today, what, if anything, will that achieve?
The Office for Budget Responsibility produces independent forecasts. It's like the Treasury's watchdog, and it's mandated to do that twice a year. Now, it already did that in March when Rishi Sunak had his budget. God, that seems like a long time.
A long time ago.
And it kind of makes sense to wait until nearer the end of the year for it to do its second independent forecast, because the government has just announced its energy price cap, and we don't know how much that's going to cost, because the cost of that depends on the wholesale price of gas. If the price of gas is high, it costs lots of money to deliver the price cap. If the price of gas falls, the price cap can actually make the government money, unusually. So the Office of Budget Responsibility is now talking to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, unusually, as you say, and they're thinking about whether or not to bring forward that assessment. Now, we know there are draft estimates of growth and revenue knocking around Whitehall. There always are, and sometimes journalists like me even see them, though they're particularly market sensitive, of course. Just a couple of things. Kenneth's actually right. The pound has more than fully recovered. It was at $1.08 this time last week before the mini-budget, and it's now at $1.11. It's surging, which suggests that a lot of what happened after the mini-budget, well, it happened on Sunday night, Monday morning, so there was quite a lot of time, was driven by short sellers, by market traders, deliberately trying to test out the government's resolve, knowing that a lot of the media, a lot of the Twitter sphere, which suddenly becomes the media, mainstream media, didn't like the budget because they didn't like the cut in the top rate of income tax. But that cut in the top rate of income tax only cost, only £2 billion. It's nothing. It's a rounding error. So I think what's happened is this mini-budget instantly got really political. It shouldn't have been this political. I don't think they should have cut the top rate of income tax at a time like this when so many people are struggling. Why give a tax break to people that earn more than 150 grand a year?
Trickle-down economics.
Absolutely. So I think that was wrong. I think that was indulgent. But it didn't really amount fiscally in money terms to a hill of beans. But it completely changed perceptions. And so the market sensed that the British media was up for giving the government, frankly, a kicking. And they piled in behind that, knowing that you'd get a kind of downward doom loop. Because journalists, I think, were looking for that judgment from the financial markets. The financial markets could weigh in and make that judgment in a kind of self-reinforcing spiral. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think the government has made some mistakes here, I really do. And it needed that Bank of England intervention, the sort of first rung on the ladder of emergency interventions. Not a very dramatic emergency interest rate hike, but a kind of technical tweaking of the bond market, which for now seems to have worked. But it strikes me that we are coming into a very politically tumultuous time. Again, the weekend between the party conferences is always a time of huge tribal politics, briefing and counter-briefing. And in the early part of next week, it doesn't give me any pleasure to say it, I do think there will be more market turbulence, which will mean more nail-biting and...
Why? What's going to drive...
And pencil-sucking for folk trying to get a mortgage or service their personal debts.
Well, why is that? Why next week?
Why then?
Because it's a time of maximum political exposure for the Conservative Party, for Liz Truss and her Chancellor. They will be going to party conference in Birmingham, and a lot of their MPs don't like what they've done because they're getting shouted out of the golf clubs, basically. Now, you said, Anne, that the Treasury Select Committee has called for the OBR to bring those forecasts out earlier. It's not, with all respect, it's not actually the whole committee. It's the chairman of the committee, who is Mel Stride, who was Rishi Sunak's campaign manager. Now, I'm not saying he's not a decent man. He's a very bright man, and he's an excellent chair of the Treasury Select Committee. But the response to this budget, this mini-budget, has been overwhelmingly political, in my view, rather than analytical and rational.
Interesting. We were talking to Laurie Laird, the economist, earlier on. Now she's quite doom and gloom on this. She can't see the sense that she can't see how it's going to generate growth. But even said the government hasn't even described what its meaning is.
Yeah. What do we? When we talk about growth, what do we really mean?
We mean the economy expanding more quickly, because before the financial crisis in 2008-9. The British economy generally expanded at around 2.5% a year. And that expansion generates the revenue, generates the wealth that pays for everything else. Since the global financial crisis, we've only been expanding at a trend rate of 1.5%. And that completely changes the economy. Life feels different, it feels tougher, and it changes politics too. It makes politics a lot more contentious because there's less revenue, less public spending to go round, if you like, for any given amount of tax. Now, Laurie may well be right. If the markets decide, they want to trash this government, then they can do that. We've seen that in the past. But what I would say is this. What's really happening here isn't because of the mini-budget. The mini-budget and that top rate of tax, for reasons I've explained, was a spark, but it wasn't the cause. What's actually happening is that the whole world is moving away from an environment of ultra-low interest rates and mass money printing, which is what we've seen since the global financial crisis. And so the UK, the US, the Eurozone, the Japanese just did emergency measures at their central bank. Mortgage rates in America are higher than they are in the UK.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about the pound's recovery against the dollar. Isn't it also because the dollar has slumped?
No, I wouldn't say the dollar's slumped, and the dollar is at an absolute tear. It's close to an all-time high against other major currencies precisely because the Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank, has been raising rates very, very aggressively. It did 2 75 basis point, 0.75% rate rises in a row. We didn't do that. We just did a 50 basis point interest rate rise. So the dollar is very, very strong and other currencies are very, very weak. But we have to put this in a global context. The world since the financial crisis, the world of ultra low interest rates, massive money printing is coming to an end. It's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for all Western economies. That's just the reality. And in my view, and it is just a view, but I think it will be borne out, what's actually happening here in the UK has very little to do in itself with the mini-budget. The mini-budget was just the spark. The deeper cause is a long-term adjustment to higher interest rates and to tighter monetary policy, and central banks basically getting out of this kind of zombified world that they've been in since the global financial crisis.
Kwasi Kwarteng has said that there's more to come. What could be more?
So politics, there's a lot of machismo in politics. If the Prime Minister's male or female, if the Chancellor's male or female. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, number 10 and number 11, they will be absolutely adamant that they are not going to be pushed around by financial markets, because once they show weakness and there's blood in the water, they're finished. They're finished politically, they're finished financially. So they are doubling down. Liz Truss wasn't apologising yesterday in her rather awkward, it must be said, interviews with many excellent local journalists. I didn't like the way some people were disparaging local journalists.
And you wonder whether they thought they were getting
that was
easy
out.
ride.
That was out of order. Some of our best journalists are local journalists, as we all know. They don't want to retreat from their tax rises. They want to stay ideologically strong in order to show that this is all part of the plan and they will win through in the end. But in the end, Laurie is right. We just don't know. Time will tell.
OK. Liam, thank you. Well, let's put a slightly brighter spin on it, though. I think it's quite interesting.
Here, a bit of positivity, isn't it?
It's quite nice. Yeah. Let's bring it up to date then with some of the headlines. It is 9/11 and the Chancellor, more work to do, is being urged to use levelling up funds to stop tenants being forced out by soaring rents. The National Residential Landlord Association wants Kwasi Kwarteng to use £1.5 billion to unfreeze housing benefit rates and expand mortgage interest relief.
Migrant children could be at risk of being mistakenly sent to Rwanda. That's according to the Refugee Council. A report published by the charity says 94% of children it supported last year were wrongly considered to be over 18 by the Home Office.
A coroner is set to rule on whether social media contributed to the death of a 14-year-old schoolgirl. Molly Russell ended her life in 2017. The inquest heard how 13% of Instagram posts saved, shared or liked by Molly in the 6 months before her death were related to depression, self-harm or suicide.
And the Royal Mint has unveiled the new 50p coin featuring the face of King Charles. The coin's going to enter circulation by the end of the year, replacing those featuring his mother, of course, the late Queen. But there will be a memorial coin range featuring Queen Elizabeth as well.
Well, on that very issue, let's talk to our Royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. So what do we make of this new coin then? I have to say, on the Royal Mint website, it looks very grand.
It's very snazzy, isn't it? So I think it's a number of things which we're going to see over the course of the next year or so, which makes the reign of King Charles seem more and more real. I think the first thing to point out is that he is facing on the left rather than on the right. Her Majesty the Queen was facing the right, and that dates back from the 17th century, actually, that every monarch will face a different way from their predecessor, apart from Edward VIII, who reportedly preferred his left side, and then he famously abdicated, which meant Queen Elizabeth's father had to become king.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Gosh. I must say that the effigy, we're calling it, aren't we? The image of King Charles is actually rather nice. I was wondering how it would turn out, and it's not bad. It's not too... Those are the coins of the Queen, of course, but the ones of King Charles... yeah, the face is realistically old, but it isn't too awful, is it? It's just... No, it's not bad at all.
No, it's not.
It's chosen well.
Yes, it was the sculptor Martin Jennings who designed it, and it's been personally approved by King Charles. And I suppose, like you say, it's a realistic representation of what King Charles looks like. He's not trying to Photoshop, as it were, what he looks like, as previous monarchs have done previously. He is in his 70s, of course, so he's just trying to be as realistic as possible.
It says a tiny little MJ underneath it.
Is that the sculptor?
So that's the sculptor
yes, Martin
Because
Jennings.
it is very much a sort of 3D thing, isn't it? It's not just a silhouette. But the coin, that's the one that we're looking at is the 50p. That's the new one. Yes, that's the new one. Yeah. I was just wondering what's on the other side.
So two new portraits of Queen Elizabeth II in memoriam and commemorating Her Majesty the Queen in those memorial coins, which are going to be released in October. This range commemorating Her Majesty the Queen. All new coins from January the 1st, 2023, are going to be minted with the effigy of King Charles III. So that's when we'll see all the other coins start to enter circulation. We can, of course, still use coins with Her Majesty the Queen on there, but they will gradually be taken out of circulation as they wear down and get older.
Can you explain to us why he's not wearing a crown?
Yes, so there's a bit of speculation as to why. There's perhaps a couple of reasons. It's actually tradition that kings do not have a crown on their head in the coins, and also Queen Elizabeth, in her first coin in 1952, was not wearing a crown either. And the same with Queen Victoria. Her first effigy did not depict her with a crown. Perhaps this is because they had not had their coronation yet, so that's perhaps a reason. But King George V, King George VI, none of them wore a crown during the course of their reign on the coins, on the effigies. But another reason, I think, is perhaps King Charles wanting to slim down the monarchy and be a bit more modern. In the cost of living crisis we're, of course, going through, we know that he wants to have a less expensive coronation. As I said, he wants to slim down the monarchy. But, of course, Brits love the pomp and splendour of the British monarchy and the crown jewels and everything that goes with it. But perhaps a whopping great crown on his first coin, having not been crowned in Westminster Abbey during his coronation, is not perhaps the image that King Charles wants to send across.
Oh, maybe not. I'll tell you what, I'll be getting hold of one.
What, a crown?
No. yes. No, one of these. It'd be quite nice to get a commemorative £5 coin or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just to put in
because
the collection.
it is a real era, changing era, isn't it? Yeah.
It's lovely. I
Bit
like
of history.
it. Cameron, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Got much more to come, including a look ahead to, not to more coins, instead to this weekend's London Marathon. We'll talk to the event director after this.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence across Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening's rush hour. A lot of spray and surface water on the roads, blustery conditions through the Channel as well. But that rain does get out of the way, and then we're left with a whole raft of showers packing in from the west. Slightly milder nights, but we'll still drop down to single figures, and it won't feel very pleasant on Saturday morning because it'll still be quite blustery, not as windy as today, and we'll get a mixture of sunshine and showers. With the winds coming from the west, it'll be western areas that see most of those showers. Northwest Wales, northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Not many getting to eastern areas, so a decent chance here could stay dry. Thickening cloud could bring some more persistent rain into the southwest later on. Temperatures maybe a touch higher than today's values. Feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, out the breeze. That breeze easing further on Sunday. There'll still be a few showers, mostly in western Scotland, but for most places, a dry and a bright day on Sunday. But watch out for that wet and windy weather today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's very rapidly approaching 9:22. Morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, this Sunday, 50,000 people will be lacing up their running shoes to take part in the London Marathon. Since 1981, 40 races have held so far. What do I mean that? And it's survived an ever-changing London racecourse and, of course, a global pandemic.
Ah, well, one man who's done it already and is prepared to join in last minute again, Paul Coit.
I've got to tell you that...
Could you jump in?
We're going to speak to Hugh Braysher, and Hugh is fed up with me saying that am I the youngest person ever to run? Because I feel that I should be in the record book somewhere as the youngest person to actually run it.
Because you lied about your age?
Because I lied about... the way you said that, Anne, made me feel very uncomfortable, the fact that I lied about my age. We've got Hugh anyway, who's the race director, looks after the whole London Marathon, and there he is there. Morning, Hugh.
Good morning, Paul. Yeah, you are infamous for being the youngest ever London Marathon runner, yes.
The thing that does worry me, though, if I do enter, do I have to put my real age or do I have to add another year because they'll say something doesn't tally up with back in the 80s?
I'm not sure electronic records are as good as going back that distance, back to the 1980s. So I think you probably got away with it, or you had got away with it.
I think so. It was on papyrus. I think my actual entrance was actually written down. But anyway, the London Marathon, 1981 was the first one. Of course, started by your dad, the great Chris Braysher, and those that don't know, your father, of course, one of our great athletes over the years, involved in the 4-minute mile, wasn't he, with Roger Bannister? So how did the whole thing begin, and is it still getting bigger, Hugh?
Yeah, well, it began, like most good things, in a pub. The pub was called the Dysart Arms in Petersham, and various runners from his running club called Ranelagh Harriers had come back from the New York City Marathon. And they kept waxing lyrically, and this is 1978, they kept waxing lyrically about how amazing the experience was. So my father and John Disley went out to New York, and my father wrote an article. He was a journalist for The Observer. He wrote an article in The Observer, and basically he said he'd had an epiphany like Saul on the road to Damascus. And he basically sort of challenged Britain. He said, we knew we had, he knew, John Disley really knew that London had this course, but did we have the heart and soul to welcome the world? And I think that's what marathon running is about, the community spirit. That's what he said in October 1979. And 18 months later, the first London Marathon took place. Memorably, Dick Beardsley and Inga Simonsen crossed that finish line hand in hand. And that was 1981, and over 1 million people and £1 billion pounds has been raised for good causes. So it really is, it's just become part of Britain's sort of positive society, and it is fantastic.
And what I love about it, Hugh, is that it's not just about the running. Every single person you look at in the marathon has a story. They have an amazing reason for being there, don't they?
Yeah, those reasons to run, and the emotion that people feel, and the togetherness that people feel. Life is tough. Life is really hard, but the marathon just brings people together. And this year there are some incredible stories. And Anousheh Zoureh, who was locked up in Iran in jail, one of his dreams was to run the London Marathon. That kept him with a purpose, kept him alive, and he's going to be there on the start line on Sunday. There are so many of these stories. This will be the first ever Tyler West, the first ever Strictly contestant, who is also then running the marathon at the same time as they're doing their training. And I know when I ran the marathon, I was walking backwards down the stairs 2 days later. So how on earth he's going to do his training, I really have no idea. But it is the stories, as you say, Anne, that make it such an incredible event.
I think they do the backwards thing in the tango, so maybe that's going to work somewhere. I know it's obviously being in October. The next one is coming up, isn't it? I know the entrants are going to be open for 2023, and Anne, I really think 2023
is my year.
Is your year.
So,
what do you think?
It'll be my year for something, but probably not that.
OK.
But I'll be there.
Come on, Anne. It's the
There you go.
23rd of April.
The race director has got you now, so
This
you've
is
got
the
no
incentive.
choice.
Just enter the ballot. You never know. You could get in. It opens on the 1st of October. You never know.
Good luck, Hugh. Have a great
Thank
Sunday.
you
Hope it
very
goes
much.
well.
Thank you
No,
very
it's
much
a great
indeed.
event.
Paul, thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.
That is it from us. We're not doing any marathon training next, but we are going to be tuning into Emily Carver. She's got the briefing in a couple of minutes.
See you tomorrow.
Good morning. I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. Bit of mist and fog out there first thing this morning, but wet and windy weather already in evidence. Of course, Scotland and Northern Ireland will win out and spread to all areas through the day, thanks to this area of low pressure, which has really been intensifying overnight. Look at those isobars squeezing together. Very strong winds this morning over western Scotland, and those strong winds will continue to move in across Scotland, and particularly lively gusts across the far northeast through this afternoon. The Met Office do have wind and rain warnings in place. That rain will last for a few hours, 3, 4, 5 maybe, and could be quite heavy across Scotland, spreading into northern England and Wales by lunchtime. East Anglia in the southeast, bit of mist and fog this morning. Most of the day will be dry and bright, but that rain will arrive this evening. It clears from Scotland and Northern Ireland this afternoon with a few showers packing in on that gusty wind. It's going to feel cold with the wind and particularly that heavy rain, which will affect the Midlands, East Anglia in the southeast through this evening.